It's just like, all right, sign the Mylar. Like,
Okay, we're online, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, 2026. The time is now 1:35 p.m. The regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the El Paso Area Transportation Services Local Governments Corporation, doing business as the El Paso Transportation Authority, is now in open session. Commissioner Jackie Butler is presiding as the chair of the board, and the following agenda item will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Butler, the next agenda item is public comment. We did not have anybody sign up.
Thank you very much, Anna.
Next, we do have item number 4A, present a certificate to TransDev's Employee of the Month for February 2026. In the absence of Ms. Sylvia Balcazar, we have Jennifer Garcia.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. The Employee of the Month is going to be Liliana Gallo, and I want to share a few words. She's someone that everybody can count on. She has shown a strong sense of urgency, dedication, and reliability. It doesn't matter how busy we get, she always gets the job done. Her work ethic, positive attitude, and commitment make a real difference every single day. We're lucky to have someone like her in our team. Thank you, Liliana.
I agree. Thank you very much, Liliana, for all of your service to El Paso County, ETA, and TransDev. I've been able to see you in action, so I appreciate all of the hard work you do. We have a certificate to present you as the Employee of the Month for February 2026. This certificate is hereby awarded to Liliana Gallo. Your outstanding performance, hard work, and dedication is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Thank you.
The next item will be 4B, receive a presentation from the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority regarding current transit capital projects, presented by Raymond Thayes, Executive Director, Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority.
Welcome, Mr. Thayes. Thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thank you. Raymond Thayes with the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. And I do have a presentation. In the interim, I'll note, I was asked by Mr. Ando to speak on three things. One, general background on the RMA and status of the RMA to date, and then also on the two projects that we're helping the county and ETA out on. So the first one is the passenger shelters and sidewalks project, and the second one is the transit facility, maintenance and operations facility. If you'd like to skip me, I'm okay with that. While you
No, we don't want to skip you. Hopefully we just need a
That's all
minute
right.
to get your presentation loaded.
hold y'all up.
Is it the same presentation that we had on Monday?
yes.
Okay.
Really, I've blocked off the afternoon if you'd like for me to come back. So you all can.
Mr. Ando, do you think we can get this loaded soon, or do we need a few minutes? Perhaps we can jump to the
Yeah,
consent
we go
agenda.
consent agenda,
Okay.
and then we can come back. if That's okay.
We'll come back to you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Oh, there it is. We got it up.
Oh, never mind.
Sorry about that.
After that big buildup, I hope it's interesting. Okay, let's advance the slides, please. So as I mentioned, I'll give you a briefing on the RMA generally, and then the transit facility project, and also the shelters and signage project. Next slide. The Regional Mobility Authority, most of you all know us. We are a local governmental entity tasked with developing transportation projects. So all of those examples that you see there are transportation projects that the RMA can be involved in. So it's everything from, oh, great, thank you. It's everything from roadways to rail, airports, pedestrian, bicycle paths, parking, intermodal, international crossings, mass transit, and even tramways. And that's unique to the local RMA here. We've partnered with El Paso County on various projects throughout the years, especially roadways, trails, bike share, aviation, and transit. And again, we'll speak on the two transit projects today. So the RMA was created back in 2007 by act of the City Council of the City of El Paso. We've got a board of directors that governs us. The chair is appointed by the governor, and the remaining 6 board members are appointed by City Council. We have a staff of 3, myself as the executive director. We also have Robert Studer, who's our director of finance, and we recently added Sal Alonso, who many of you all know as our project manager. Our jurisdictional boundary is technically the city limits of the City of El Paso. However, by design, regional mobility authorities are authorized to operate outside of our jurisdiction very easily. That's the whole concept there, is that since roadways do not end at jurisdictional lines, entities that create roadways should be able to cross those lines very easily. So because of the nature of where we are located, we can operate into New Mexico and into Mexico as well, and certainly heading east into Hudspeth County and beyond as well. So a very flexible organization. This is our current board membership. We've got Joyce Wilson, former city manager of the City of El Paso, as our chair. Monica Perez is a local attorney as our vice. Chris Lindler, who used to run Beaumont, is on our chair now, is on our board as a treasurer, and Lena Ortega, former state rep, as our secretary. Beyond that, we have Matthew McElroy, Robert Palacios, and Laura Avalos, rounding out our board of 7. To date, since creation in 2007, we've been involved in the expenditure of over $1.5 billion and involved in various types of transportation, including different roles. And this is an important distinction because when you think about transportation projects, while it includes everything from rail to pedestrian to transit and aviation, it also includes various roles. So we can provide financing for a project, we can design it, we can construct it, maintain it, operate it. We can do any combination or the whole of a project. So it really just depends on what our project partner is looking for. And that last paragraph there shows you some of the partners we've been involved with. TxDOT projects, Texas Parks and Wildlife, which is the Weiler aerial tram, city and county, Horizon City, Socorro, San Eli, Village of Vinton, and the town of Clint. So we've been partnering with a lot of folks here in the region. Here's some sample projects, and I won't belabor it, but this hopefully will be part of your backup, so you can have a look at this and feel free to give me a call if you ever have any questions. But just a sampling of some of the projects that we do in the various modes. So aviation, we do a lot of work with the county and the Fabens airports. On the transit side, certainly we're helping you all on a couple of projects we're going to talk about here in a moment. We're also designing a transit center for the town of Horizon. Beyond that, we're rebuilding the Weiler aerial tramway for Texas Parks and Wildlife, also interchanges, and we have a bike share program in downtown up to the west side and Ascarete Park as well. So everything you see there from planning to actual design, construction, and financing. So pretty flexible organization. And I should have mentioned at the outset, obviously, please stop me along the way. I'm going to burn through this pretty quickly. You've got a nice solid agenda, so I don't want to waste too much of your time. But if you do have questions, stop me and I'm happy to discuss them. So the 2 projects we're going to talk about, this first one is the transit facility project. So this one goes back quite some time, where we partnered with the County of El Paso to develop the project in the first place. The initial step was an interlocal agreement between the RMA and the county, whereby the county asked us to secure a property for the placement of the transit facility. So that was an interlocal back in 2013. In 2014, that interlocal was amended to add a study to identify the needs of the transit agency. What is it that you all needed, and what did you want to accomplish with the transit facility? That study is now complete, and it actually serves as the guiding document for what it is that we're actually designing. That third bullet then in 24, the ILA was again amended to begin design activities, and that took us through 30%, which is where we are now. And then the last bullet, you all took an item before you all last month at your board to authorize an amendment for the interlocal to add EPATs into the interlocal between the county and the RMA, and to also provide funding up to 60%. So that'll allow the RMA to take the 30% designs and take them out to 60. And that was recently approved by Commissioners Court yesterday, or the day before. So we should be taking this project to 60% soon. On the right-of-way, that is complete. I mentioned that before. Back in November of 25, we completed the environmental process and actually closed on the parcel for $1.5 million. And we provided everything from survey all the way through negotiation and deed execution. So technically, the RMA is the current owner of that property, and once the project is up and running, we'll turn all of those assets over, likely to EPATs at that time. I should mention the purchase price was below budget, so we actually ended up with a surplus on the right-of-way side that we ended up pushing over to the design side to help us to get from 30 to 60%. Here's a graphic. You've likely seen this one. In fact, you've seen some of these slides before because I presented to you all last year on this project. But that's the location, and here's an aerial. And again, all of this is in your backup. The study is also complete, as I mentioned. That was a needs study. That was to help identify what the facility should accomplish. Through HDR, which is the firm that we brought on board to help us through the study process, they completed a charrette process, and this actually came back to your board in May of 25. And this was the master plan concept that was selected. So this is what we are pursuing, subject to, of course, budget. Then lastly, as I mentioned, we are already under design. We retained HDR to pursue from the study phase into the design phase. We have cleared environmental. We're past 15 and just right around 30% at this point. The next milestone will be to achieve 60%, which, as I mentioned, should begin soon now that we've got executed agreements, or approved agreements, I should say. As I mentioned, HDR will begin 60% design. And I think you've heard all of this before. Oh, so we'll get through 60% design with this interlocal agreement amendment. And then at that point, it's our understanding that the county is pursuing grant funds to get us from 60% to 100%. And then at that point, when we're ready to go to construction, the county has already been awarded $15 million in grant funds to construct a phase of the project. So really, once we get to 60, pull down that remaining funding from hopefully grant funds from TxDOT, and we'll be ready to construct. So that one is on its way. And again, these conceptuals are part of your backup. All right, that takes us to the shelters project. By way of background, we partnered with the county several years back to place the initial shelters that are actually out there in the ground today, and this is an extension of that. Going back in time, the county partnered with Texas A&M TTI to develop the locations and the number of proposed stations for their system. So that study formed the basis from which we pulled the locations for the actual stations to be placed. However, lots of changes have happened since that initial list came online. The transit system has been realigned, so some locations no longer make sense. So the county took back that list, has tweaked it, and provided us a revised list last week. We gave that to a construction contractor that we've brought on board for this project, and they are currently pricing that new list. So assuming everything fits within the existing budget, we'll execute a change order and we'll get to work with that existing contractor. We do have 3 types of stops, and I know you all have seen this one before, but the numbers have changed. So I kept this slide in here. We've got a category 1, which is the most significant type of shelter. It's actually got a shelter. It has solar-powered lighting, a bench, trash receptacle, bicycle rack, and a bus stop. That's a category 1, and we're placing 22 of those through this project. Category 2 is a slightly lesser option. which is really the concrete platform, sidewalks, bench, and a bus stop sign. And we've got 28 of those. Originally, it was 34. We removed some of those based on some realignments of bus routes. And then lastly, we've got 150 bus stops of Category 3, and that's basically just the actual sign itself, the sign and the pole identifying a stop location. Originally, that number was 53, but we've significantly increased the number of those stops. And a lot of those are actually being placed on existing Sun Metro signs, or poles, I should say. So that's the scope of the project. Here's some graphics to show you what we're talking about in terms of the 3 categories. Top left shows the shelter. The bottom to the left shows number 2, which is the bus bench, and then the third one is the pole and the sign. Here's an older graphic that shows you the existing shelter that the new ones will look like. And as I mentioned, we have selected a construction contractor by the name of Hawk Construction for $2.2 million. So we are ready to go as soon as we get that change order back from them. We'll be ready to begin construction of these shelters. And we think it'll take about 10 months to complete this project. That's what I have. Happy to answer any questions. I went through it pretty quickly, so I recognize that.
Thank you, Raymond. Do any board members have questions? 10 months is the timeline from starting now?
Starting construction. So we have that change order out once we execute the change order. And there's a couple of things. When we first signed the contract, we wanted to get them under contract right away so that they could place the order for the shelters, because those big shelters take a while to fabricate. So that's happening now. So once those are ready and when the change order is executed, then we'll be able to start the clock to actually do installation. And that should take us to about 10 months.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ando, do you remember how those shelters were funded?
It appears that we're using 5339 grant funds as well as 5311 funds.
Okay.
And these were grants that were secured through TxDOT.
I know, and I'm reminded frequently that while we understand what we're doing to improve transit across the county, it's the physical infrastructure that really matters, especially to the people who use it and in the communities themselves. And so I would love to see us be able to build more shelters in the future, especially shaded structures at our bus stops. And so if there's an opportunity to look for more funding, be aggressive. I know we're very aggressive with TxDOT in our grant funding requests, but I really do think that our goal should be to have shaded structures at every single bus stop across the county, and but I know that requires a lot of funding. So hopefully we'll be able to work with you on this moving forward.
We'd love
Raymond.
to. Yeah, we'd love to partner with you again. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the updates. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
You want to add a question?
Yes.
Raymond, I know there was probably challenges, like maybe, I don't know, maybe right away. And then you mentioned realignments. Have you had to do relocations of any of those shelters?
We have, in fact. So it's been some time since the original TTI study came out and when we actually got to procurement. So in that period, there's been realignments by TxDOT. Some of these are on TxDOT corridors. There's been bike paths placed. So that does require us to move some. And that's part of that renumbering of the list that I talked about earlier. So yes, that's definitely part of the challenge.
Yeah, because we talked about it before. I talked about it with John. The one we have in Horizon, because of the reconstruction they did on Horizon Boulevard.
Yeah.
It seems like it needs like a decel lane or something, or like a what do they call it? Where the bus stops and whatever.
Like a pull-out?
Yeah.
Pull out.
Yeah.
Turn out.
Yeah, because it's like right up, I mean, it's in the, in right away right now, right? But it's very close. In other words, residents will be really close to the street when they're boarding and all that.
Oh, I can pull that one up. You're speaking specifically on Darrington?
Right.
Okay.
And the concern is that it's right after an intersection of Darrington and Horizon Boulevard. It's like it's the busiest intersection, right? And then maybe a few feet, I would say maybe about 100 to 200 feet is where that shelter is.
Okay.
So the speed of the cars, that's when they start like speeding up when the lights come So it's kind of, I think it's a little dangerous. Like I saw a gentleman yesterday, elderly, and he almost went into the street.
Okay.
Um,
Let me pull that one, and I'll share it with you, and we can work
Okay.
through that one.
Sounds good.
I'll copy John, of course, Mr. Ando.
Yeah, I had to talk to John about that before, on that one. Possibly, maybe relocate it, I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll have a look.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I mean, that brings up a point to me, is if any of the municipalities where the bus shelters are being built have questions about the locations and the structures themselves, should they reach out to you, Mr. Ando? And then
Myself,
you can
yes,
work
and we'll
with, you can work
coordinate
with
with
the RMA?
RMA.
Okay,
Before we put them in.
yeah.
Preferably.
Preferably.
Yes, ma'am.
Would there be any value if we came to each of the municipalities and did a presentation about the project, since we're now getting ready to go into the 10-month?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, I'll reach out to each of you guys so we could get on your agendas.
And lastly, wait a minute, so is there a contingency for those relocations?
There is some, not a great deal, but there is some contingency to allow for some
Okay.
movements. But I'll tell you, because we are in the middle of this change order process, I'm not sure what the contingency looks like, because we're assuming, because of the significant increase in the Category 3s, that's probably going to eat up some of that contingency. So I should answer, well, I should say that the answer is a little bit unclear until we get that change order. Then we'll have a much better feel for what the budget is versus the final scope.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Raymond, I appreciate
you.
it, thanks.
Moving on to item number 5, consent agenda. The consent agenda comprises items 5A through 5F. Are there any items the board would like to pull?
I do not have any to support. Okay.
A second?
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Stout and a second by Eddie Conde. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We are now moving on to the regular agenda. Item 6A, receive a presentation from Texas County and District Retirement System regarding El Paso Transportation Authority participation and authorize EPAT's participation in TCDRS effective upon transition to employees of El Paso Transportation Authority. Employment presented by Ms. Christina Fox, Development Manager, Employer Services, TCDRS.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you. Were you able to get that presentation that I emailed? Yes, ma'am. Okay, perfect. Okay, there it is. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me to speak with you today. The presentation that I'm going to go over is in your folders, and it's really just to let you know who TCDRS is as a system, how the plan works, how it's funded, and finally, for you to make the ultimate determination whether or not you all want to have the employees transition from El Paso County employees to your own plan. And I will take any questions that you have for me. So TCDRS partners with more than 890 independent plans across Texas. Every county in Texas participates with us, and the rest are made up of political subdivisions like yourself. We provide retirement, disability, and survivor benefits to more than 394,000 Texans. As of December 31st, 2024, the size of our fund was $51 billion, and we are one of the most well-funded public pension systems in the nation. We've been around since 1967. That is when we were created by the Texas legislature, but we don't receive any funding from them. So the only three things that fund the benefits going out the door are our investment earnings, employer contributions into the plan, which we'll talk about, how much it would cost El Paso Transportation Authority to begin their own plan, and then employees' own money into the system from payroll deduction. When we look at the cost, you are not going to see a line item for administrative fees because we do not charge administrative fees to any of the counties and districts that participate with us. What it cost us to run the system, we take that off of our investment earnings so that when we report what our earnings are, it is net of all fees. And finally, we are managed by a 9-member board of trustees that are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Texas Senate. The three things that set us apart as a system is that we are savings-based, which means the employees and the employer are saving for future promised benefits, retirement benefits in advance of when they will be paid. We're responsibly funded because our rates are variable and adjusted from year to year, and determined by our outside actuary who studies the workforce and future promised benefits. Finally, you all as a board would have flexibility and local control to review the plan annually and make any changes to coincide with your workforce needs and your budget. How the plan works? This shows how TCDRS is structured compared to traditional defined benefit plans like the state of Texas or teachers' retirement system, and then defined contribution plans. We're really a hybrid of both of those. We are what's known as a cash balance plan. The feature that makes us most like a defined benefit plan is that when employees become vested and eligible to retire, they do receive a monthly benefit for the rest of their life that they cannot outlive. The way that the plan works, every pay period, employees contribute a percentage of their pay to TCDRS. The proposal is to match what they are currently doing at the county, which is 7%. By state statute, their accounts would grow by 7% compound interest annually. When they are vested and eligible, they receive a monthly benefit for life, depending on the option they choose that can extend to a beneficiary upon their passing. And finally, I will go over, because it is important, the account options available to employees if they separate employment and don't make it to retirement, what they can do with their accounts. This shows the power of that 7% compound interest over time, how their accounts grow. The darker shade at the bottom represents contributions from pay. The lighter shaded bar at the top represents 7% interest over time. As you can see, the benefit of this system does come with time. The longer somebody stays working, the more that they're going to generate in their account from interest. And then at this point, when a person's ready to retire, is when the matching dollars that you were setting aside for them would come into play. We would take that cash balance amount of the match being proposed, the same as the county, $2.50 per dollar, would be applied to the person's account. So if I round this figure down and I say that this was an El Paso Transportation Authority employee ready to retire, they've got $100,000, then at that point, the organization would put in their $250,000. That is the cash balance amount that we would use to annuitize over their lifetime. Employee participation is mandatory, so anybody in a full or a part-time position would have to participate in the plan. Nobody can opt out. And then any future new hires would have to be automatically enrolled with no probationary periods. The way that employees earn service time, every month in which we get a deposit for them, they're going to get credit with 1 month of service time. Of course, all of their El Paso County time would carry over to this new plan. And vice versa, the time they're accruing here would count at El Paso County as long as they left their account open. They can speed up retirement by letting us know if they have time with these other public pension systems in Texas, because the time amongst all of them is shared. Money will never cross over, that stays separate, but time amongst all of them is shared for vesting and eligibility purposes. If anybody has military time, once they are vested with TCDRS, they can add up to 5 years of military time as well. These are the 3 things that employees can do with their account if they separate employment, don't make it to retirement. First thing they can do, keep their money at TCDRS, and it would serve as a savings account because it's still going to accrue 7% compound interest annually. The only time we force them to take it out is at age 73 when the IRS requires a distribution. They can roll their account over into a plan that allows rollovers, like a 457 type plan or a 401k. Final thing they can do is take a withdrawal of their account. If they do that, it is subject to taxes because all the money going in is tax deferred. If they're younger than 59 and a half, more than likely they'll get hit with an early withdrawal penalty at the end of the year. But what is very important to note on this slide is that even if a person is vested, meaning they've put in the minimum amount of time that you specify they have to work for El Paso Transportation Authority to earn the matching dollars you're setting aside for them, they separate employment, they roll their account over, or they withdraw it, those matching dollars do not go with them. They stay in your subdivision account fund for the benefit of the other employees that are still here. All they take with them is their account balance, their interest. The only way they have access to matching funds is in the form of a monthly benefit for the rest of their life. The options that you have available to choose, we'll start with replacement ratios. This just shows how much of a person's final income at retirement will be replaced by their TCDRS benefit. With what is being proposed, you'd be looking at the green bar. That would mirror a 7% employee deposit rate, 7% over time with a $2.50 per dollar match. The blue bar represents base benefit levels, and you always do have the possibility to adjust benefit levels in the future. The basic plan options, the employee deposit rate and employer match, you have the authority to adjust that on an annual basis if you choose, as long as it's within those plan parameters. Of course, what's being proposed is the employee deposit rate at 7% to match what the county is doing, with the employer match of $2.50 per dollar. If you wanted to adjust that in the future, you could. You can adjust the employer match in 5% increments. Retirement eligibility provisions are a little different because once you lower an eligibility requirement, you can't raise it in the future. So the vesting requirements that you have to choose from are 5, 8, or 10 years of service. The county offers an 8-year vest, but what is being proposed, because the cost is less, is a 5-year vest. The rule of 75 versus the rule of 80, that's a person's age plus years of service combined to equal one of those numbers. And the county currently has the rule of 75 in place, so that is what is being proposed. 20 years or 30 years of service any age, regardless how old a person is, if they have put in that amount of years of service, they can retire. What is offered at the county is 20 years, so again, with this plan, that is what is being proposed. Additional plan options, monetary prior service, they're not eligible because they've been with the county, so we won't talk about that. Group term life and coverage, I did include a brochure in your folders, is being proposed. This is not a benefit that the county offers, but the cost, because the demographics here are so much fewer people, the cost to offer it is pretty low. And what it would provide, paid for by the Transportation Authority, is if somebody passes away while they're actively working, it would give that person's beneficiary 1 times their annual salary. And in retirement, if it's still being offered, it would give the retiree's beneficiary a flat payment of $5,000. And the added cost for an entire year to provide that to the employees would be $226. Partial lump sum payment at retirement not being proposed. You could always add it in the future. The county doesn't offer it. That just allows somebody to take a portion of their account balance out in retirement. And finally, the last piece of the presentation, how this plan is funded. I mentioned earlier we don't get any state funding. So this represents one benefit dollar that goes out the door at TCDRS, and last year we paid $2.5 billion in benefits. Of that, 74 cents of the benefit comes from investment earnings. What our investment team is doing with all of the pooled money coming in from all of the counties and districts that participate with us, the other 15 cents of the benefit dollar comes from the contributions that the counties and districts are making to provide for the match. And then finally, employees own 4, 5, 6, or 7% into the system. That's the remaining 11 cents of the benefit dollar. As you can see, investments are extremely important to funding the benefits. To achieve that, we have a completely diversified portfolio. These decisions are made by the TCDRS Board of Directors, but of course they have counsel from our internal investment team along with the external investment managers that we hire. This shows what our results have been over the past 30 years compared to industry-established benchmarks. And the most important thing to note here is that we have surpassed those benchmarks over all periods, most by 1% or more. This shows what our actual returns have been since we began diversifying the portfolio. The gray band represents our risk tolerance, how comfortable we are in allocating all of the money into different asset classes to achieve long-term results of stable returns. So in any given year, we are expecting our returns to land within this gray band. For the most part, they have. There are a couple of outliers, the two biggest being the Great Recession in 2008, followed by the subsequent recovery in 2009. We have preliminary results in for 2025, which will get approved at our June board meeting because we've got lagging results, but we are expecting another strong year of 10.5%. What does that mean for employer contributions? Well, we know that regardless of where our investments end up, members get 7% earnings in their account from year to year. Quite simply, when our investments do not perform, system-wide employer rates will go up to make up for the losses. And conversely, the way we've had the past 3 years, when we perform better than our 7.5% return assumption, System-wide, employer rates go down because we've got more in the system that we are able to share with employers. We do have mitigation strategies to weather market downturns. So when that occurs, we have reserves. And right now, our reserves sit at over $3.5 billion. And with reserves, we are funded at over 97%. So in a down market, the TCDRS board will decide how much to take out of reserves. They disperse it amongst all employer plans to mitigate rate increases. And then we also smooth those losses over a 5-year period to allow the markets time to recover and to stabilize rates for employers as well. So there are stabilization techniques in place to weather market downturns when they do occur in the future. Some employers choose to send us more money. That is always an option, and that just funds your plan faster than our normal 20-year amortization. So it's getting you to 100% funding faster. You can do that in the form of an elected rate or making a lump sum contribution. And again, you can make that decision in any given year. Finally, the services you get from us, you will have a dedicated person from my team, Employer Services, to serve as your account manager. That person is Erica. She's in the gray blazer. So she manages all the accounts in this area. She's able to speak to you all if you ever need her to come and present. And would be your go-to point of contact for any questions that you have related to the plan. Our member services team is way larger than this. This is just our traveling team, but we do have a call center as well that is there to take member questions. Finally, we've got a very interactive website from both a member perspective and an employer administration perspective. I would train on that piece, and members would establish their personal accounts so that they can continue to utilize that to manage their retirement account. They would just now, if you choose to make the switch, toggle between their El Paso County account and then El Paso Transportation Authority account. So that takes us to where we are now. I know that if you all decide you want to make the transition to your own plan, you all are looking at a transition date of September 1st. And so all that we would need at that point is you all voting on it. I do not have to be present for a vote. This is strictly informational. But if so, we would just need the signed plan documents in prior to the participation date. The cost for the plan, which I don't think is going to be on here, but it is within the folders that you were handed. And I've highlighted Plans 3 and Plan 4 because Plan 3 mirrors the El Paso County plan exactly. Plan 4 has one major revision, and that is lowering the vesting requirement from 8 years to 5 years. The cost for that would add 1 basis point to the cost. You can see the cost difference there on line 15, or at the very bottom, the dollar cost to the district. And then it's also incorporating that group term life coverage for an added $226 a year to provide life insurance for the members. And that is a lot of information, so I'm happy to take whatever questions you have for me at this time.
Thank you for the very thorough presentation. Mr. Ando, do you have anything to add?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman. I just want to state that staff's recommendation as part of the staff report is to authorize the participation in TCDRS following Plan 4, which would have the 5-year vesting and add the group term life. And the purposes of doing that is, one, is to make sure that we have a good environment for our upcoming employees that will be transitioning over to the authority. And 2, the cost that's been presented by TCDRS is lower to the authority than if we had remained with El Paso County, and provides additional benefit to our employees just because we have a smaller group and a younger demographic group as well.
Right.
So that's the only comments I wanted to add.
Okay. I agree. Plan 4 looks like it's the best option for ETA employees. Do any board members have questions? Yes.
There's quite a few, but don't feel obligated to give a lengthy answer, and if anyone else wants to interject, please interrupt. So you mentioned the proportionate, the PRP.
Mm-hmm.
If ETA adopts the proposal, would the county service and the ETA service be a PRP between the two plans?
It would, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In that scenario, the retiring employee from, let's say, ETA, who had been a member or who had been vested as well in the county, they would still receive one paycheck in retirement?
So no, the funding will come from El Paso County and then El Paso Transportation Authority. So we
The
would,
funding will, but so they get two separate checks?
yes, they would retire separately from both accounts.
And so what is the benefit? So in the sense that it's a defined benefit where they have benefits for life, their monthly payment will be the same. What's the formula for determining their monthly benefit?
So it's all cash balance. So the formula is strictly looking at how much they've built up over the course of their career. And they would start over with $0 in their accounts once they transitioned over here, starting in September. Their El Paso County account, assuming that they leave it intact, is still, they're not making any more deposits into it, but it's still generating 7% cumulative compound interest. They would start up a new account here. When they're ready to retire, we are simply looking at what they've built up in their account from deposits from pay and interest, and at that point, we apply the $2.50 per dollar match. That total amount then would be used to determine what their monthly payment is, depending on the option they choose. Because those payout options are really going to drive how much money they get every month, because it depends on if they want to leave money behind to a loved one.
So it's an actuarially determined.
Yes.
But assuming they outlive it, they're still guaranteed to
They are.
continue receiving.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
actuarially is what determines.
How long we
their cash
stretch the money
balance.
out. You got it.
Okay. You answered that question. Refund of contributions, if they choose to refund, I know you mentioned that, they do get the guaranteed 7% on that?
They do get
Okay.
that.
Related to State Pension Review Board
Mm-hmm.
requirements for funding plans, all that other stuff that are required, TCDRS is compliant with that, correct?
We are, yes. So
So
they
there's no
regulate
burden
how
on
we
ETA
run.
for
They
that.
just don't give us money, and we do present at the Pension Review Board every legislative session.
So ETA has no responsibility for
For doing?
complying with any of that?
No, we will take care of that for you.
And then last question is, are there ever cost of living adjustments addressed?
You would be in complete control of that, the way that the county is in control of it for their retirees. So when the plan has retirees, and just so that you know, for new plans, you can't have a retiree for at least 13 months, but I know the demographics here are pretty young, so I don't think anybody's eligible anytime soon to retire. But when people do retire, they have to be retired for at least 13 months to be eligible for a cost of living adjustment. That would then become a determination of the board from year to year whether or not you want to grant them cost of living adjustments, because it would increase the rate that you're paying from year to year. And we can review that with you at that time. We can tell you what the cost is. You can fund it up front. You can work it into the plan. We can also show you the impact that it has on members' benefits as well. We have CPI COLAs to choose from, as well as flat rate COLAs.
And I think you touched on it, what you mentioned in the table here, the funding, the ETA's responsibility for funding its portion. You dictate that?
Our actuary does, yes. They'll
Okay.
study the workforce from year to year. If you all were to come in September, your rates would be locked in for the remainder of this year, as well as all of 2027, because our rates for 2027 are going out in April. So you would not have a rate increase or decrease until January 1st of 2028. We would let you know in April of 2027 what that new rate is going to be, so that you can make any adjustments to the plan if you choose to.
So the 250% match would only be applied towards the benefit calculation, but the funding is going to follow the prescribed contribution?
Yes, the funding would follow the 14.53% to fund the 24.5% benefit. It's actually would only be costing you all 14.53%, and that's because our investments are doing the majority of the work. And the El Paso County's rate is somewhere in the 18% neighborhood. Their demographics are much larger.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Just one real quick question. On the slide where you had the three options for retirement, the first one was 60 years. And then what is the option that the
5,
county's
8, and
at?
10?
6 years and then vesting, just after having vested after 5, 8, or 10 years, that's it? That's what,
Those,
right there.
This slide, okay, the replacement
Next one,
ratios.
I think the next one. Or, sorry, the one before that. Right there.
Oh, this
So
one, okay, all the
retirement
basic plan options,
eligibility,
okay.
So at age 60, and so so the county of El Paso's at 8 years, but you're suggesting that we do 5 for the ETA?
Yes, 5 is being recommended.
Okay.
So just to give you a perspective of the current demographics, 2 of the 4 employees are already vested at the county. So they would, correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, but they would already be vested at ETA as well, right? Because they've already met the county. 2 employees at ETA, one would be able to vest next year, and the latter would vest in 4 years.
But to clarify, that's vesting by years of service, not yet by age.
That's vested by years of service. And then in the case of the other 2 employees that are newer, one would vest in 3 years at the county if that person left the funds in their account, and then the other would vest at the county in 7 years.
Well, this is combined now, so if ETA gets in, that vesting is combined, so it's just 5 years total at either.
No,
No.
they
No.
still have to meet the county's requirements of 8 years.
Okay, so that was what I was asking, if it's really a PRP. Because normally the vesting time in either organization counts
Oh,
towards.
no, in this one, they've got to meet them.
Okay.
The requirements of both.
But
The account has to have the requirement met.
Yes, yes.
But the preface is that the 2 employees would have to leave the funds in the county and not touch it, and
Yeah.
remain at ETA until they can.
They're gonna invest at the
to-
county.
to get vested at the county. So if they leave ETA, then they would basically lose their vesting at the county.
So they could still get vested at the county while at
Yeah.
ETA
That is correct.
over.
As long as the money stays in the account.
Yes.
But, okay, I think it's, so now I'm confused. So proportionate, generally, the 2 organizations recognize each other's service time, which it
Correct.
sounds like we just said here. But a second ago, you said that wasn't the case.
Well, it's just that they'll recognize the time, but they do have to meet the eligibility requirements that each entity has adopted for the plan. So El Paso County's got a higher vest, 8 years, than if you all adopt the 5-year vest. So if somebody has 4 years of service there,
They still have to do 4 years at ETA.
no, they would still have, yes, they still have to do 4 years of ETA to get their El Paso County
Right.
matching dollars, but only 1 year here to get their matching dollars
Okay,
from
so
you
it is
all.
recognized on both sides. It's just that the standard is a little higher on that side to
Yes,
vest.
you,
Yeah.
that is
So they-
correct.
They wouldn't lose the county match
No.
if they didn't have 8 years and then moved over to ETA.
Correct. As long as they leave their account open, that's the,
caveat.
once they close it and they can access it, that's when they forfeit the matching dollars that they were earning at the county.
And you don't have rollovers, right? So they couldn't close it
Correct, they
there and roll it
cannot,
over into
no,
ETA.
nobody can roll over or borrow against this account.
So if we use me as an example, should the board want to have me for the next 8 years, then in theory, I could vest at the county 7 years from today. But I would be, with the terms of my contract, I would potentially be able to vest at ETA sooner,
5
but I would have to have option years exercised by this board to vest at the county.
And so, one of the issues we were talking about at one of the other meetings was, the money that people have in their county account, if they become ETA employees, it's not gonna compound it's not gonna compound at the same rate that it would if it was still in the county, right?
Right.
Because they're not contributing to it actively.
Right.
Is that the same case scenario for any possible future employees that have a TMRS account from a municipality?
So that is, their plan would be completely separate, but We can acknowledge TMRS time, it's just the money is always, they would always, if they have an
Separate.
open account with TMRS, they'll draw a benefit from TMRS and then a benefit from TCDRS, from whichever district or county they're working at.
Yes, go ahead.
So is there a cap for the contributions?
There is no cap for contributions.
Okay. And then the other question I had, for a 456B, would that be a different vendor, or would it be through you all if they opted to get one of those?
So I'm not 100% familiar with the 456B. I'm familiar with the 457 because those are eligible for government organizations. You could, if you wanted to, have an additional supplemental plan for employees to tuck away extra money, but by IRS standards, you cannot match both. So if y'all had a TCDRS account, you can match that one and just offer a 456 or a 457 to the members if they wanted to withhold more or save more, make their own investment decisions. You just can't match that plan.
But you wouldn't.
But we don't offer it. We
Right.
don't
So the
offer
county-
that
the
kind
county,
of
For
plan.
example, contracts with Nationwide for our 457
Yes.
plans.
Not sure if they would be interested in that. The 457?
About the 457?
Right.
I'll be honest, I don't have enough experience about the 457. I'm not sure if the county offers that.
We do.
We do, okay. I have not taken advantage of the 457.
It's just basically, it's an additional retirement type fund that you can put into, and Nationwide is the manager. And, I mean, it obviously has different rules from what TCRS is, but it's non-taxable, right? Funding that you put into an account, kind of like an IRA.
So,
And it appreciates or depreciates as how the money's invested in the market.
we
kinda
are,
like a
as part of
401.
our discussions with the county as relates to replicating the same benefits that we have today as part of ETA's package, they are in discussions, and we'll get an update from Human Resources later, but they are in discussions with all of their insurance brokers and the risk pool about our participation in those. So it seems like the 457 would be an optional benefit that an employee could choose.
Yeah, I
And
don't
if-
think there would be cost to us because we wouldn't be matching, they would, it's just an option that we would contract with Nationwide and they would offer that.
I was just wanting to make sure that they were offered, some
They'll have
additional,
administrative fees though, for sure.
Yeah.
administrative fees, okay. So it wouldn't be through you all, it would be through
Nationwide.
Well,
Nationwide.
there's a number of companies that do it, the county contracts with Nationwide. I mean, we would probably have to do a purchasing.
Yeah, and as part of the
Process to
proposed
get that.
master agreement, the county's going to pass through any of those administrative costs back to ETA, should we participate in those optional benefits.
Okay. And then the other question
But I think
had-
it's also, I agree, I think it's a good idea to look into whether that's an option that we could afford to.
Yeah, the reason I'm saying that is because of that whole issue that you were talking about as far as their money here at the county. They're not able to take it over there. And then maybe some other way to make up some of that would be to take advantage of a 457. It was 457, right? You said?
It's a 457, yes. TCDRS offers us one as well, and it's through MetLife. So there are lots of providers out there that offer those kinds of plans.
It's kind of like the 401, but for the government, right?
For government, yeah.
Right.
And the other questions I had were for John. John, so your current staff, this was all vetted, I'm assuming, right, with them, as far as explaining the.
Yes, so when we drafted the transition plan in February, I got feedback from the staff. Then we did bring in Christina to do a presentation to the staff to help understand the implications of the TCDRS. And then we also discussed this with the human resources presentation we had with staff. So I think the biggest concern that I heard from staff was they did not want to lose their financial investment, which is in the retirement, which is one of the justifications of why they became county employees. So what I've heard from Christina and the two presentations that she's given, it is my understanding that there would be no loss of investment. And if we adopt a different policy, a plan from what the counties does, our plan is gonna be more advantageous to the newer employees that have joined the county because because two of the four have already vested at the county anyway.
Okay.
And the critical point, as Christina stated, is that if people want to receive the same contributions that they're receiving from the county today, do not withdraw money out. Leave the money there for as long as you remain an employee at ETA.
Oh, okay.
That's
So-
the critical piece. As long as you don't withdraw the funds, then at the retirement age, they'll still get their 7% at the county, but then they'll also get their 7% at ETA. And then as she stated, there'll be two separate checks. I don't, and I understand Commissioner Stouts' comment on the compounding, but the compounding is gonna be different because you have two accounts versus one account
Yeah,
building
they're
on
starting
top.
from zero with with this new account, so that amount's not going on to, like, gonna come, so if they have $100,000 in their county account, and it's the appreciation rate, I mean, it's gonna appreciate at a higher rate
Then,
than an account that's starting at zero.
Zero.
That would be, if. they
Added on
put-
top.
If they would put something on top and like, add $10,000 to the 110,000, it's gonna appreciate more quickly than just having the 10,000 by itself.
So, okay, so if I understand it correctly, then the interest will continue to accumulate in the county one, right?
Correct,
But it won't
and-
have the match.
roughly whatever their balance was when they separate employment, it roughly doubles every 10 years. So if they've got 50,000 in 10 years, it would be 100,000. That's strictly based off of it earning 7% compound interest, even if they're not actively
With no match.
contributing to it.
Okay.
And I don't know if maybe, because I've toyed with it too, I'm like, ooh, they probably like the benefit of getting 7% in two accounts. So, because that one still, their El Paso County account would accrue 7, and then this one would start accruing, so it's, I mean, somebody would have to really crunch the math to see if the benefit is different in the end, because they're accruing 14% as opposed to 7.
Yeah, I know that we still have a lot to consider when it comes to impacts to staff and the transition.
Absolutely.
And I do think that, as a board, we're being very proactive in trying to mitigate any negative impacts to the staff, especially when it comes to their future retirement planning. And so we appreciate, all of the time you've spent on this and giving us these options. I don't think we need action today, but this is definitely something for us to consider for next steps, probably in the next month or two.
Would you like me to bring before the action piece at a future meeting?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
That's okay. I want to make sure that we're talking about this as a part of a complete transition package.
Okay.
I think it was good to have this conversation over a few meetings.
Right.
I think we've learned a little bit more. I'll say, having spent 14 years as a trustee for the city's retirement plan, from where I sit, I'm comfortable with what you presented and what the options and the staff recommendations forward. I think it's a very prudent path forward.
Agree. Thank you very much.
And ultimately, the decision that the board makes, that will be taken into consideration as we build the fiscal year '27 budget, to either align with the proposal from TCDRS's, or if we want to remain at the county, to align with the county's costs.
Well, I think it's fair to say that we're all comfortable with the fourth plan, and that fourth option, which is the most generous
I
one.
think it's most in line with what the county's offering, and
Yeah.
probably even a little bit better because of the 5-year instead of 8-year vesting.
Yeah.
So,
And then the
in terms
lower,
of-
and then we have, and then the lower annual cost because of the younger demographic group and the smaller pool. I think we're at 14.53%, whereas the county's at 18.79%.
Yes. So I don't think this was posted for action, but if you need direction, I would say we should use those numbers.
I believe it's posted for action.
Okay.
Let me read it.
It just says receive a presentation.
Oh, the last part, and authorize EPAT's participation in TCDRS effective upon transition of
okay.
employees to El Paso Transportation Authority employment.
And authorize EPAT's participation.
Right.
Okay. Well, do we want to hold off until we learn about the 457? Or
think that's
or do you
just
want
an
to approve
add-on.
this? You want to just approve this as
The
is?
the
right
457 is really an add-on, because we'll be coming back before, once we hear back from County Human Resources on what they can provide to us as relates to our participation in the other benefits. So I kind of took this benefit and separated it because it does, to be honest, it could be managed separately as part of the other packages that the county is going to be doing. It doesn't necessarily need to be voted together as one comprehensive package.
But I guess my question, would it still be subject, I mean, because this is now a financial commitment to participate, wouldn't you still need the final numbers in the budget proposal before you'd want to, or would it be subject to the budget?
It'll be subject to the budget because we'll be bringing before a fiscal year 27 budget later this summer. And if if the board wants to take action today, we'll just factor in the 14.53% in the salary calculations. Right now, we're assuming the 18.79% calculation.
Oh, so there's actually a savings?
Yes, there's a savings.
Excuse me, I have a question. Would we need to add a provision to recognize the time for future TMRS? in
Oh,
case
no, that's
you-
automatic. That's part of the state statute. We have to honor all of that time. That's the legislative laws.
So I had one last
Yes.
question. As far as, you had said with any type of issues, as far as risk, you have the reserves, right? Is there any other type of market risk type insurance that you might have?
No, that's it.
That's
It's
it?
just that's our mitigation
Reserves.
strategies is our reserves, and then just the fact that when market downturns occur, we smooth it over 5 years instead of passing through all losses at one time. And those losses are subject to the longevity of the plan. So El Paso County in a down market is going to take a much larger hit than El Paso Transportation Authority because it would be a brand-new plan that doesn't have a lot of assets built up. So taking those hits or those gains, at the way we've had the past 3 years, is relative to how mature the plan is, how big it is.
Right.
How many assets do you have under valuation statewide? Do you know?
How many,
What's your total fund worth statewide?
well, based on 2024, 51 billion, but after this return, we're estimating 55 billion,
And you're 90% funded?
with almost over, close to 4 billion in reserves. So when those numbers are actualized in June, we will be at 99% funded as a system.
That's
So if we had to close the
mind-boggling.
door, we'd be able to fund 99% of promised benefits.
In the pension world, that's
It's
beyond
huge.
impressive.
We're solid. It's a very proud story to tell.
You're definitely doing better than CalPERS in California.
Yeah.
You may have heard
I
about
don't think they're requiring them to pay their required rate from year to year.
Because you said the state doesn't provide any.
No funding from them, none.
Okay. So the
That's why
reason-
we have the options. So when down markets do occur, even when 2008 happened, we did not have a lot of plans change benefit levels. Harris County, our largest employer, did because they couldn't afford the rate that it went up to. So they lowered their employee deposit rate to put a little bit more money in the employees' pockets, which lowered their cost. And then when the rates stabilized, they raised it back up to the 7%. So they went from 7 to 6%. But that's why we give employers that flexibility and local control to adjust the employee deposit rate and employer match. Because right now you're sitting at the highest, but if in the future budget constraints get smaller and you've got to rein back on retirement, you can lower it for immediate cost savings.
Okay,
And you
you
can
do-
increase it, you have that ability to do that from year to year.
Okay, and you said you had a board that
And,
kind of,
and state pension does not allow that.
you have a board that kind of oversees all that, right, as well?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. They're appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Texas Senate. The chief of our board president is Deborah Hunt. She's retired from Williamson County Appraisal District. So,
Yeah, so the reason I was asking about that the insurance is because I think what happened with Enron and stuff, and then after that, I think a lot of retirement funds were doing that additional insurance for those types of risks.
yeah, no, there's no insurance for plans, and we don't have a lot of plans that cease participating with us. Certainly no counties have, but districts that need to get out of the system for whatever reason, we run what we call a termination study at that time. So we look at what benefits they've promised through when they're going to terminate. We look at how much assets have been built up, and we say, okay, well, to make everybody vested and eligible on this termination date that you're telling us you don't want to participate with us anymore, we're going to vest and make all of your employees eligible to start receiving a benefit on that day. This is how much you owe to make their accounts whole. We haven't had a district yet that hasn't funded it. But if they weren't to fund it, it would just impact the benefits that we'd be able to pay out to the members. And so those that are vested and eligible would get the first benefits, and then those people that are vested, and then those people like John, who maybe only have a year, are people that would stand to lose money if that district didn't choose to fund that plan, because we're not getting funding from anywhere else. That's how that works. And y'all would fall into that category as a district. But like I said, those occasions are very rare when districts get out of the plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chairwoman, if you'd like, in regards to the action piece, if you'd like to give us direction to pursue the recommendation, and then as part of the fiscal year 27 budget, should the board adopt that, then that would be the piece where we would execute any appropriate plan documents to join.
I think that, I feel more comfortable with that, and we have time, correct, to make this final decision for the transition, so.
Does this need to go back to the Court of Commissioners?
The transition plan will be coming back to the county commissioners.
Okay.
And so we're all the decisions we make here will come back to
Okay.
the court. And so my preference would be to bring back as a holistic of a transition package to the commissioners court, if possible.
I concur with that.
Yeah. Any other questions or concerns or comments? Okay. So do we need to make a motion to
If we could, yes. So I
pursue-
guess my proposed motion would be, if the board agrees, is to authorize our participation upon transition of employees, or actually not authorize, but direct staff to budget for participation in TCDRS.
Plan
As
for.
participation as part of the fiscal year 27 budgeting process, and upon adoption of that budget, then authorize the director to execute any plan documents with TCDRS for a separate plan. So basically, until this board adopts the fiscal year 27 budget, I wouldn't execute any documents participating in TCDRS, because we would now, with your direction today, we would now budget the lower amounts in our upcoming budget for you to consider.
Okay, and just to clarify, that would be Plan 4 that's presented
That's correct.
in front of us today. Is the board comfortable with that? Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve.
I second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Butler and a second by Eddie Conde. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Moving on to item 6B.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 6B, receive a presentation regarding the basic financial statements and annual report for fiscal year 2025 for the El Paso Transportation Authority, and accept the basic financial statements for fiscal year 2025. Mr. Mario Arenas.
Good afternoon. My name is Shelley Reddick, and we've got your audit for the year ended 9/30/2025. Hopefully you have a copy in your packet. And we were here just a few months ago and got 23 done, got 24 done, so now we're all caught up. Here's 2025. I do want to thank John and Annette at the COG and Judy for their help in getting this all done and answering all our questions. We appreciate the time that they took to do that. Since you guys are all on other boards and councils, I will start off with just the opinion letter, and that's on page 1, but that is, it says, the opinion is the second paragraph, and it says that it presents fairly. This is what they typically call a clean opinion. So just wanted to point that out. So on this third year, there's not a lot of difference from the year before. It sounds like 2026 has a lot going on, and 27 is going to be really busy, but Mario's just going to highlight some of the numbers for 25.
And I'll start on page 6. This is your statement of net position, or essentially your balance sheet. So one of the bigger changes that you had there from the prior audit, the prior year, was the 752,600 receivable, which that's the the dues from El Paso County. They weren't received before September 30, 2025, so that was just a timing of when the funds came in, which they came in shortly thereafter, within a couple months. Your next line item is due from fiscal agent. So those are the monies that the Rio Grande Council of Governments is holding on behalf of ETA. So that was 334,000, and that was very similar to the prior year, just about a 21,000 increase from last year, which we'll get into that side of the revenues and expenditures here in a little while. Next up is your liability section. You had your accounts payable at 122,000. And nothing really out of the ordinary there, just the same expenses that the ETA has been accruing for legal, for consulting, fiscal agent fees, and that sort of nature. At the end, you have your fund balance section, and that was 964,000. And that had an increase from last year because of the dues that increased for the various member entities, which we'll touch upon the next page, which that would be page 7, is your statement of activities, or essentially your income statement. And in general, all of the dues increased for all the entities, but El Paso County had the largest increase from all of them, roughly 600,000 for the ETA for the operations in fiscal year 2025. Next up is your expenditures for the year, and that did have an increase of roughly 51,000. And again, it was just kind of the main focus of from year 1, year 2 to year 3. In year 1 and 2, you were focusing a lot of consulting and PR for the community to establish ETA. For fiscal year 2025, the main focus was on doing the research with TTI and making the financial plan to make sure the ETA reaches its objectives accordingly. So once you had your revenues and expenditures for the year, you come up to a change in net position of 688,000 for the year, and that's what mostly attributed the increase in fund balance, which you were right around 275,000, and you ended up with 964,000 for the year. So in a nutshell, that was your financial highlights for fiscal year 2025. I was going to send it back to Shelley so she could finish off the presentation, but if anybody had any questions on the numbers, the balance sheet or the income statement, I could go over those if there were any.
Any questions? No. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Section is the notes, and I was just going to highlight that these are the standard notes. They're the same ones as the prior 2 years, just updated with current information. Also in your packet, you should have received a separate letter, and it's just a standard letter that we are required to communicate with those charged with governance. There was no management points. Sometimes at the end of the letter, we'll make some suggestions. We had no management points, so there wasn't much to report on that. That's really all that we have, unless you have some questions.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Do any members of the board have questions or comments? I just want to say thank you. Thank you for this audit, and thank you to our fiscal agent and Annette and her team for all of their support, and thank you to John as well. I know that it's a team effort here, and like you mentioned, we're basically just getting started. So it's nice to have this foundation to build off of. So appreciate that.
And Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, I just also want to add that starting in page 320 of your packet is the annual report for fiscal year 25. That is a document that the bylaws does require us to produce for the board to just highlight the activities of ETA. Has pictures of each of you in it and just all of our accomplishments, the services we provided. So like you said, we're just getting started, but we're now officially caught up with all of our annual reports and audits. And we look forward to presenting the fiscal year 26 financial statements sometime next year in the spring.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would request action from the board to accept the basic financial statements.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Stout and a second by Eddie Conde. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 6C, receive a presentation regarding the fiscal year 2026 budget amendment and approve the fiscal year 2026 budget amendment. Ms. Christina Boone and Michael Walk.
Welcome, Michael.
Hello, good to see you all
in
again.
person.
Yes, it's a little bit better to be here and see you all. I'm Michael Walk with Texas A&M Transportation Institute. My colleague Christina might be online. Oh, she is as well. So I'll be leading the presentation on the FY26 budget update. Christina's here to answer additional questions as they come up, and we should have a presentation as well. Thank you. So this presentation focuses in on the FY 2026 budget and some changes that were needed to that budget, which was adopted by this board in September of last year. I will cover highlights of the changes to operational costs, changes to capital costs, and anticipated changes in revenues, and ultimately what the bottom line of those changes looks like, and there will be some time for discussion. You do have some handouts that should be in your packet. There are two handouts pertinent to this presentation. One is a budget revision summary, which does lay out by line item what the adopted budget amounts were, what the revision amount is that we're proposing today, ultimately what that modified budget amount would be and why there was some revision to that particular line item. And we also prepared, as a part of this exercise, a monthly spending plan of operational costs, which takes us through the entire fiscal year 2026 by month, by line item. And that's also another handout in your packet. So I'll just focus on a few. Okay, thank you. It's just so sneaky. The PowerPoint just slides into place. A few of the highlighted changes to cost. I took that big detailed handout that has all of those changes by line item and lumped them into a few key categories of changes. So one change is a $71,000 reduction in labor costs for ETA staff, and this is due to the delay in onboarding the new positions. There's a $233,000 approximately. I rounded everything to thousands of dollars just so I don't have to say $1 all the way down. There was a line item added for fuel. There was no fuel line item in the original budget, and except for the administrative vehicles or oversight vehicles. And so because fuel was removed from the TransDev contract and now is being paid directly by ETA, that's now a new line item in the budget. There were also some additional software or license fees for customer-facing software, as well as for paratransit software, which was also removed from the TransDev contract for a net increase in $56,000. The FY26 budget that was adopted included almost $600,000 for MTM, which is a contractor to provide ADA paratransit eligibility and quality assurance services. There was no need for that contract, so that was taken out of this modified budget. And also there's an $83,000 increase in the cost of leasing the Sun Metro operations and maintenance facility downtown, so that lease reflects the market rates and is no longer under the TransDev contract. A few other changes. Overall, the purchase transportation costs, or what's being paid to TransDev under the contract with TransDev, well, we forecasted a decrease from the adopted budget of a little over $1.1 million. I mentioned a few of the reasons why already. One is that fuel no longer is in that contract. Some of the software is no longer in that contract. And the ETA is paying for the lease of the operations and maintenance facility. So that is not being paid through TransDev. Instead, ETA is paying for those things directly, ultimately resulting in a net cost savings to ETA. The modified budget also caps the number of van pools at 155, which is about where the program sits today. That program has been continuing to grow every month, every year. And at direction of staff, we set a cap on this at 155 van pools, which helps to keep the cost of that program flat from here on out. As you may be aware, the Gold Route, which was the intercity bus route that came from New Mexico into downtown El Paso, is no longer receiving financial assistance from ETA. And so the budget, this modified budget reflects that change as well for a reduction of $725,000. We added the on-delay service, which is the microtransit service serving San Rosario and Clint as a cost to this budget. And there are various other changes to purchases or lease that are being paid through TransDev, including some temporary payments for the maintenance facility before it comes under direct lease to ETA, and some software, et cetera, as well as purchasing onboard equipment for the buses to track the buses, what's called automated vehicle locator bus system, AVL system, and automated vehicle announcements to be compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So those expenses increased the budget by $260,000. Those are the highlights of the operational cost changes. On the capital side, the capital budget did go down by $1.7 million approximately because of the delay in the stop and shelter installation. Of course, that cost is going to be shifted and reflected in the FY27 budget. And there were also an addition of about $183,000 for the electric vehicle chargers, which hit the FY26 budget. We originally anticipated they would be paid in FY25, and they weren't, so they cash flowed in FY26, so we wanted this modification to reflect that. So those are the highlight changes on the cost side. On the revenue side, one, because you don't have as many costs, there's a net reduction in operational costs, so we draw down less revenue overall. The top line item, of course, is the reduction in fares. When we put the FY26 budget together, we assumed fares would be collected on all services throughout the year. So with with going fare free in December 2025, we reflected that in the budget, and of course, the Gold Route no longer, fares not being a part of the budget either. A few other items here are, really when you get down to the bottom line, there is a decrease in the local share required in this modified FY26 budget of about $253,000. So this last table just kind of puts everything into major line item groups, so you can see what the adopted budget was, totaling $18.48 million. The revision, which is going to decrease that amount by about $3 million to the new modified budget of $15.5 million. And that concludes my presentation on the modified FY26 budget. I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you for the update. I'm impressed by how much has changed since we adopted our first budget last year. But I also recognize a lot of this is because we've been trying to find cost savings, and so thank you, John, and your team for doing that, and with our work with Sun Metro and moving forward in some of these partnerships, and obviously leading to cost savings. So thank you very much. Does the board have any questions? Yes, Mr. Rubio.
Mr. Walker, on the canceling of that MTM contract, what's in place now to cover that?
Sorry, say that last part of your question again?
In other words, what's covering that? And since you canceled it, how do we comply with that?
So I believe, John, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, so the board may recall, I brought this item, I believe at the August 25 board meeting requesting that we cancel the MTM contract because for the small size of our operation, I felt their costs were not reasonable. And so what we're presently doing is TransDev does review the access applications. They have like a third-party reviewer that reviews it, and then they send it back and then either deny or approve the application. I've been working with county administration and Mr. Bishop as it relates to, are there other partnerships that we could potentially find that specializes in reviewing paratransit applications. And we've even included discussions with Sun Metro on how once we've been able to identify that vendor, potentially Sun Metro might be interested in joining in on that as well. So we are continuing discussions with University Medical Center to see if they can help us with that. So I may be back before the board in the future about some type of partnership once we can identify one.
Yeah, John, I really appreciate all the cost cutting and stuff, and I guess it's music to my ears to hear that the contributions may come down.
Well, I hate to laugh like that, but that's our next presentation, and we're going to have some further discussions with this board on some concepts on how the board would like to proceed with that. But unfortunately, it's not likely because cost of transit is going up. But it could give us an opportunity to look holistically at what we're doing and determine if we need to make changes so that we can keep it at the same level or slightly increased. But we're still going to continue to strive to save money if we can.
Yeah, I still appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing. Appreciate
Thank
that,
you.
and your staff.
Vote to approve the amendment?
Second?
I have a motion by Commissioner Stout and a second by Mr. Art Rubio. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 6D, receive a presentation regarding the draft fiscal year 2027 financial plan and contribution amounts. Mr. Michael Walk.
Okay, thank you. Good to see you all again. Michael Walk with Texas A&M Transportation Institute. I realize that you haven't had the opportunity to receive this presentation in advance, so I do apologize for that. We were putting some of the finishing touches on it, but I am going to be walking you through these preliminary results for the FY27 service plan, for, the budget, and then ultimately member contributions.
I do want to just also preface to the board that today this is informational. It's fairly rough, and we kind of just want to hear comments from the board, seek some direction, and I envision that we'll be discussing this at the April meeting and possibly the May meeting, and hopefully look for some action either at the May or June meeting, and that will be the caveat to build the financial budget that we'll bring before the board to adopt, and also make presentations at each of our member agencies to discuss what ultimately this board does decide. So to take this information today as information and help us with just any feedback so we can refine this and make it reasonable for the board to consider in the future.
So this presentation will walk through quite a bit of content, and I will do my best to make it digestible and understandable along the way, but please feel free to ask any questions as I go along. We'll do a quick overview of the methodology of the whole entire process. I will walk you all through what we were calling the baseline scenario. If you might remember at the last board meeting, we talked about bringing multiple FY27 scenarios to the board for consideration at this presentation, one being just basically continuing current service, the other being investing in service expansion. So the bulk of the presentation will be focused on that baseline scenario. It's where we've done the most work and have the most detail. We'll walk through the service plan, the costs and revenues, as well as the preliminary contribution amounts. I will walk you through a very upper-level summary of the potential implications of enhancing the service based on what's contained in the Transit Development Plan, or TDP. I'll also walk you through, the board requested to look at options for a capital vehicle replacement fund. And so we put together some options there to look at some numbers of what that could look like. And then there'll be plenty of time for discussion and next steps. Well, I will pause for discussion and next steps, and hopefully I'm happy to answer questions along the way. So as a reminder, when it comes to putting together this entire FY27 costs, revenues, and then ultimately contributions, it always starts with service. Service gets turned into costs. We look for revenues. We apply those revenues to the costs, see how much money left, how much cost is left over that needs to be covered with local funds, and then allocate that local need to members. In a nutshell, that's what we do. We've been doing this pretty consistently each fiscal year. You will see values today that includes all of ETA services, including the van pool program. But of course, The other EPATS members beyond the county do not fund the van pool program. As a reminder, the gold route is not included in the FY27 at all, so you won't see the dollars or revenues associated with that. Like we have done in the past, we applied a 10% contingency onto the cost of purchase transportation, particularly the hourly rate the TransDev costs, just as a buffer against unanticipated, unforeseen costs of running transportation. We assume no fare revenue for the entirety of FY27. We also factored into this FY27 financial plan the presumption of receiving Section 5307 urban grant funds that can be drawn down in FY27, as well as a reduction in the rural grants available from TxDOT, both at the federal 5311 and the rural state funds. Like John mentioned, the results you see are preliminary, right? We still haven't gone through the exercise of applying all the grants to specific costs. We just kind of lined them up and kind of saw how much was actually available and what's the net difference there. And I will show you the TDP scenario after we get through the baseline. Just a quick discussion of the service plan for FY27. This is what we assumed. We assumed that the current routes, 10, 20, at 40 and 50 will continue as they currently stand. Horizon City's carbon reduction program grant, which funds routes 32 and 32X, have been added to the FY27 service plan. But to offset that additional service, we reduced service on the 30 and 31 in order to basically make it a net zero change in purchase transportation costs. The details of what those changes will actually look like in practice need to be worked out, right? So we just kind of shaved revenue hours for the Horizon City routes to make basically a balance between all the services.
May I add a comment on this, please?
Yes, please.
If this is right. One thing for the board to understand too is, right now with the current transit system, when it comes to operating, it's a 50-50 match. With the carbon reduction program, it's an 80-20 match. So this means that as it relates to services provided in the town of Horizon City, should we use those carbon reduction funds, we can, in theory, if we restructure 3031 with the 32X, we'd be able to get a higher federal matching share, at least for 3 years, for those route costs, while we can see if the service materializes, which would result overall in net savings towards our grants. And also, does it significantly increase the contribution to the town of Horizon City? So it's basically using different federal dollars to cover operational expenses. Go ahead.
Thanks, John. We continued the on-delay service and the van pool service as it is, but like I mentioned in the FY26 presentation, the van pool is capped at 155 vans. So a little bit about routes 32 and 32X we decided to add into the presentation because unless you're involved in the actual grant application, you might not have seen this information before. If you have, you can tell me to skip these slides. Keep going? All right.
This is our first
So the two routes funded through the carbon reduction program are 32, what we call the Horizon City Circulator, and then 32X, which is the Horizon City to UTEP Express. A little bit about their operating, where they connect, and when we anticipate they would probably operate is provided on the table here. As John mentioned, these two routes are funded with 80% federal share. And so we incorporated that into the contribution for those routes, right? In fact, those two routes actually have a lower contribution rate than the other routes because of their source of funding. But like I mentioned, I think we recognized during this whole exercise that all of the routes in the South do need some careful study to make sure the right service portfolio is down there, particularly if these two routes are implemented, what other changes to other routes may be needed. This is just a quick and dirty map of the potential alignment of the Horizon City Circulator. It runs as a loop in both directions, so it's called a bi-directional loop, connecting areas of Horizon City to North Loop Road in Socorro, mainly using East Lake Boulevard and Horizon Boulevard. A quick and dirty map of the 32X or UTEP Express, which connects Horizon City to UTEP in downtown El Paso. And this one, like the slide 2 prior mentioned, this would basically operate as a mainly peak service trying to get folks into UTEP. Yes?
And this grant was applied for by Horizon City or ETA?
Horizon City.
But ETA will be putting up the match? Or is it Horizon City that's putting up the match?
Those are the discussions that we're having with Horizon City at this point. But the direction we've heard from the mayor and also from Art is that they would like to not increase their contribution if we can. So the only way we believe we could achieve that is by looking holistically at how current routes 30 and 31 are performing, since those routes benefit Horizon City and the unincorporated area, and then looking at a whole new service mix. So in the end, the route would be incorporated into our budget, but it would be consistent with the funding, the formula approach that is applied based on route miles operating in the respective jurisdiction. So this route will also require, should the city of Socorro be interested in participating, it will require some partnership with City of Socorro as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
All told, the FY27 service plan in terms of revenue hours is very, very similar to service operating in FY26. This table shows you the FY26 updated revenue hour forecast from the modified budget that I just presented to you, and compares that with what we included in the FY27 forecast. So basically, there's no change in the amount of service on the street under FY26 versus FY27 assumptions. I will note here that 32X, we treat it as a commuter bus route, given its service characteristics, and so it does not expand the ADA paratransit service area requirement if it was implemented. So that's the summary of the services that we planned. That's where we all start. Now we turn those services into costs. This table summarizes our costing assumptions for Paseo, for Access and Andale, and the van pool program. There's a lot of numbers on here, but I'll just break down the key points. For Paseo and Access and Andale, they each have a per revenue hour cost assumption that's based on the contract with Transdev. We did add a 10% contingency on top of that. Transdev also charges a monthly fixed fee of about $140,000 or so. We split that between Paseo and then the demand response options, Access and Andale. We also included direct paid fuel because it's also now something that ETA pays for directly, so we had costed that out by route and by service. And we also included the annual cost for the use of Sun Metro transfer centers, but this estimated at around $15,000. So that's on the service side. Now, in prior presentations, we often talked about admin and planning costs, okay? But this is the first time we've used this term of just fixed costs. Fixed costs referring to those costs that aren't directly related to adding more or less service and aren't directly tied to this routes or the services themselves. So this includes all the admin and planning costs that you normally would have seen on this slide. And we just grouped them into these major categories, just some highlights. You'll notice labor and fringe. This, of course, is higher than FY26 because the budget assumes that all the new positions are in for the entire year. Depending on what happens with the retirement and all the transition planning, that number, of course, would change. A new item in the FY27 financial plan is $70,000 approximately, which is an estimate for the central services provided by El Paso County, for example, IT support, things like that. So there's a whole central service cost allocation plan, and we're factoring that into the cost. There is a large chunk of costs that are managed through RioCog, so that's not just RioCog isn't charging you all $300,000. There's the $40,000 fee that RioCog charges, plus the task orders with TTI are through RioCog, and other marketing and legal, et cetera, are all managed there. So those are all included in that $297,000. We also factored in the maintenance facility lease, and then I just lumped everything else into all other fixed costs, because there's software, equipment, various other things like that, supplies, which totaled about $1.8 million. And we might be missing one thing in here. John pointed out to me, we might be missing an office space lease, which may be around $60,000. So we'll have to go back and edit that later. So all told, when you lump in the service costs and the fixed costs, this is how it breaks down. This table shows you the cost categories as rows, and then how much of the different services is purchased transportation, the Sun Metro license, fuel, fixed costs, and then what that all adds up into a total of $7.64 million anticipated on operational costs in FY27. Now, I have a note at the bottom of the slide because I have to prep you for what's to come, right? So this is ultimately a reduction in cost. So the FY26 budget that was just adopted by the board, this budget, FY27, is actually an 11% reduction on the operational cost side from the FY26 budget. But, so there's a little bit of a but, which we'll talk about. So I talked to you about revenues, right? So we have all the costs laid out. So then we start looking at the revenues. And so in this budget, again, we assumed that there would be about 2.6 million of 5307 funds available. 5311 is a significant reduction, as you may remember, with reporting data as urban, reduces the amount of rural funds available to ETA. So that amount is now, for 5311, is about 764,000. You can see the anticipated drawdown of those carbon reduction funds, state funds, and other revenue. Note that, of course, there's no fares in here. But ultimately, after you apply all of these revenue sources, we still are looking to need $3 million to make the budget balance on the operational side. So that far right column is the local needed amount. And these are, of course, very preliminary. We don't know for sure what the federal 5307 and 5311 amounts are going to be. But that local needed is about a $1.1 million increase over the FY26 modified budget. So before I get into allocating that local amount to members so you can see what that number looks like, just a couple of key discussion points. Anybody looking at this will go, wait, I thought the budget went down, so why does the local share go up, right? So the main contributing factors to that are FY26 used a significant amount of what we'll term rollover grant funds. So grant funds that were available to ETA from prior awards that weren't spent or drawn down. And so a lot of that money was spent down or in the adopted FY26 budget because the money was there. And so when we start the FY27 financial plan, there's virtually no rollover funds available. So we're dealing with a single fiscal year's worth of grant money in FY27 rather than having old funds to draw down on. Of course, there's no fair revenue. That wasn't a huge, contributor to revenue, but of course this budget doesn't include any. And ultimately there is a reduction in the rural funds that are available. And that use or the availability of urban funding doesn't completely offset that, at least not yet in FY 2027. So what you're going to see in terms of these numbers, we didn't consider, what if there is an FY 26 local funding surplus? We talked about, a reduction in local share needed. Was any of that carryover, right? The budget doesn't factor that in. We didn't have the opportunity to factor in any particular limits on the use of certain costs as fully urban versus certain costs as fully rural, balancing all that out because it does get pretty complex pretty quick. So that would be in an update. And like John mentioned, we didn't review the service levels to maybe reduce something here or whatever to make it balance with the budget. We just kept things as they were.
If I may add a comment too. Basically, what I'm gathering from hearing this from Michael is that our system could potentially be too big because of the fact that we used a lot of rollover older grants, and those older grants are going to expire. So it's either we use the funds or if TxDOT doesn't agree to extend those grants, we lose the funds. So this is where I come up with, we may need to look at right-sizing the transit system to live within our means, and then start incrementally expanding as we understand what known funding sources can come to this transit system. But I think overall, the system could, what I'm initially concluding is our system may be bigger than it needs to be right now. And if, one thing we could be talking about in future meetings is the performance measures for some of these routes. Some of these routes are severely underperforming. We're looking at 1.5 to 3 passengers per hour. Those are the routes we need to be looking at and changing how we deliver the services, because 1 to 3 passengers per hour, even for suburban rural system, is really very low. And that's where you want to do more demand response than a bus coming by every 45 minutes, 90 minutes, or 120 minutes.
Any other questions on what I've presented so far before we get into allocating that share?
No.
I did add this slide in just for purposes of reference. This was presented, I think, at the board meeting in February on the Socorro microtransit, as one of those other potential ways to think about better partnerships or right-sizing the services that are available in the region. Andale sort of standing alone right now. Does that make sense? Does a more unified microtransit zone in that area make sense? What could that look like? So again, I just included in here as reference to the board.
And for this, as you know, we do have the on-delay service that benefits Clint and San Elizario. If we were to merge the Socorro microtransit program into that and have the 3 jurisdictions cost share, collectively, a combined on-delay program would perform better than having a separate San Elizario Clint service and a separate Socorro service, which means all 3 of those jurisdictions would see great value, because now they're sharing in the cost of one program that actually benefits those 3 communities, because residents are traveling equally between those 3 communities versus having the 2 separate programs that exist today. And that would be one of the selling points that I would like to make to the city of Socorro, and hopefully having them join ETA, is that partnerships with the other jurisdictions could reduce their transit costs.
Good point, thank you.
So the following slides walk through in probably excruciating detail the allocation of the local share. So I will not get too much into the weeds, except to walk you through what you're seeing so you understand what's on the slides. You've seen this slide before if you've been on the board. That used to say 3 steps. This time it's 5. And you probably say, what the heck? Why are we adding more steps to this process? The FY27 process is different than before because we now have a different service mix, including the routes 32 and 32X, which have a different funding mechanism and different local contribution amount needed. And so you see them as step 2, right? And there's also the access service and the on-delay service. Even though it's being provided with the same vendor, they have a different cost share setup. So you can see here that we actually had to do the Paseo, the current routes, everything other than 32 and 32X as one contribution amount, 32 and 32X as a different, ETA access as a different one, on-delay as a different one, and then the fixed costs ultimately in the end. The contribution ratios at the bottom of the slide are really the numbers to focus on, right? That's how we calculated what each member would contribute for each service type. I will also point out that the ETA access per capita rate, the $3.02, is based on seniors and people with disabilities in the ADA paratransit service area for the jurisdiction, which is something that the board asked at the last meeting in February, rather than just total population. So the slides, there's 3 slides just for fixed route service or Paseo service. Step 1 is to figure out how many miles occur within each jurisdiction. That's what you're looking at here, reminding us. These slides do include the miles inside the city of El Paso and inside Socorro for reference, recognizing that at this point in time, the county of El Paso, those miles ultimately end up in their contribution amount. Once we know where the miles are for each members for each route, then we can allocate the cost to each member across all the different routes. That's what you're looking on this slide. And then lastly, it's that local share, right? That's the third slide here. Those contribution ratios you saw on our 5-step process chart, right? The $1.30 for regular Paseo routes and the 91 cents for the 2 new routes. Those are the multipliers. We multiply that by the number of miles in each jurisdiction to calculate the local share due from each jurisdiction. So ultimately, that ends up in terms of these are the totals once you add in all of the different routes, the new routes, the 2 new routes, as well as the current routes. This is what the local contributions would look like. We need about $977,600 of local share for Paseo. ETA access, right? This is not on delay, but this is just the access service. All the allocation is based on population. Again, this slide shows the population that we estimated within each jurisdiction's boundaries and the ADA paratransit service area. These are the population of seniors and people with disabilities, okay, not just total population. So it's a little bit better of a predictor of ADA paratransit demand. We multiply those populations by the $3.02 per person, which ultimately gives us the contribution needed to get to the contribution for ETA access. And then for on delay, we only split the cost between Clint and San Rosario, the 2 members who are benefiting from that particular service. And this actually has a relatively high local share allocation right now, which is about $13.46 per person. So we're just multiplying that by the population of both cities, and you can see the contribution from both cities associated with the on delay service. All right, so that's on the service side. So we've got through the first 4 steps of the 5-step process, okay? This is a new slide. It does show you the total contributions from all 3 services, Paseo, Access, and on delay. And you can see the total amounts, but these are the costs, right? So this is how much the service is worth in each jurisdiction based on how much the service costs. That far right-hand column, I'm providing to you not rounded, so you can see how we determine how much of the fixed costs get assigned to each member, right? And that's the last step. We add up all these service costs for each member, get that total service cost, and based on how much service cost is in each member's is assigned to each member, they receive a proportionate share of the fixed costs. And that's what we're showing on this slide. So you can see that service costs, that middle column, that's what I showed you as the total on the prior column, and the contributions needed to cover the fixed costs. You'll notice that this contribution is very, very high. It's 80 cents per dollar of cost assigned, and that's essentially because there's no more grant revenue left over to cover these expenses, right? So these are almost covered 100% with local dollars. Ultimately, these, when you add up the service contribution and the fixed cost contribution, the middle column, the FY27 local contribution, that is the preliminary results by jurisdiction for informational purposes, as John mentioned, right, and discussion. I provided on this slide also the FY26 unadjusted contributions for reference. So if you remember FY26, we had the fund balance, which reduced everybody's contributions to be what they are on the far right-hand column. That was the final numbers that were adopted by the board after the fund balance was applied. But the second to last column shows you what the contributions were without the fund balance, just to kind of give you an apples to apples comparison between the 2 fiscal years. And I will point out here something that John mentioned earlier is particularly San Rosario's contribution is much higher than the amounts last year, and a lot of that's from the on-delay service because only Clint and San Rosario currently sharing in the cost of the on-delay or the microtransit service. Any comments, discussion, or you want me to keep going?
I think that I am certainly having some sticker shock right now, and I'm sure that our board members are as well. And so I just wanna take a moment to to calm everybody, to say that these are preliminary figures. Understand that, as we have in years past, work within the budget constraints as much as possible. And like John said, figure out how to right-size and make sure that the service we are providing in each area of the county is what makes the most sense for what our budgets allow. So this is not, please don't go and be reactive to these numbers. These are just preliminary, which I think is helpful to give us an idea of what the total cost of operating transit is, right? I think we need to have an awareness that transit is expensive. And I think we've been fortunate to bring ETA to this point with so much grants. And so now it's kind of like the rubber's hitting the road. Did somebody use that the other day as a,
And to your point, Chairwoman, we're not obligated to do what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Just because we've been running these 6 routes or 5 routes for last 10, 15, 20 years, this is now an opportunity to now right-size and redesign service that makes better sense. As I've heard in the case of San Elizario, door-to-door service is much better to them than fixed route service. Route 50 is our worst performing route in the system on Socorro Road. Has 2 buses on there. It's averaging about 1.5 passengers per hour. That's one route that we definitely need to look at doing. If San Elizario doesn't see value in 50, but they see value in the door-to-door service, we cut back 50 and reinvest that savings back into the door-to-door service where they're actually starting to see growth and the value. In the case of Vinton and Anthony, looking at the Route 10 to see, do we have the right, Route 10 is our most busiest route in the system. It has great productivity, making sure that that route is meeting the needs of those 2 jurisdictions. Unincorporated, our second popular route is the 20, which is primarily the unincorporated area and Commissioner, in your district. Making sure that that service is right-sized properly so that we're running the appropriate levels of service. And if we determine it's not meeting appropriate performance measures, maybe that needs to become an on-delay zone as well. And then over time, we could graduate back to some Paseo-style fixed routes. But we're not under any obligation to have the routes stay in the current levels that they are today as we go into fiscal year 27. So, and we definitely want to rely on TTI support on helping us make that appropriate service plan so it is affordable for all the members as we go into the future.
I think I remember having discussions about budget and contributions last year, and us understanding that by using the fund balance, we were going to get, a short reprieve of the higher costs. But I also don't want, for example, San Elizario to be punished, right, with these high prices, because we offered microtransit as a solution to some of the issues that they were experiencing there, and so we just need to work on this over the next couple of months, definitely.
You actually bring a valid point, Chairwoman, is that one thing that is affecting our situation today is when EPATS was created, each of the jurisdictions gave local match with the intent to match the county grants. The county didn't use those grants in fiscal years 23, 24, or 25. Had the county had used those local match funds, we would have had a fund balance today in fiscal year 26. So in theory, even though the jurisdictions contributed for those 3 fiscal years, the county fronted transit still. This is the first fiscal year where the county's not doing that. The county's only paying its 88%, and the jurisdictions are now funding. That's kind of why the fund balance issue came into play. But had we had started this in 2023, we would be in a different state today. Does that make sense?
But even then, the county is going to be asked to pay more
Yes.
than it has before. And so costs are increasing for everybody. And I understand the goal, the long-term goal, is that we're able to bring in more federal and state funding when we can increase ridership and really grow ETA. But this is definitely going to be one of those growing pains kind of years.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. And everybody still good? You
Take a
need-
breath.
Yeah.
We're okay? Okay, all right.
A
Yes.
quick question.
Yes.
Mr. Walker, are there any additional studies that you need to come to this? Because I know you're putting together the plan and all that, but do you feel that there's going to be a need for additional studies?
Yeah, I think our consensus right now is that particularly the south region, with all of the services that are currently operating down there, do need a hard look to reduce duplication and overlapping service. So if there was a priority, so to speak, that would be the area that I think should be focused on over the next several months to find the right balance and portfolio of services in that region.
And then this also doesn't include the possibility of Socorro.
It does include the possibility of them coming back, but with my conversations with the city manager, it has to make financial sense to them. They're going to have their share of federal funds, so they'll be able to apply their share of federal funds to ETA, but they'd still have to provide a local match as well. Because of with them claiming their federal funds directly, we're not going to be able to have access to those funds, so we'll have to get those through Socorro. So building a service plan that takes into consideration microtransit for them, and then their reasonable share of if we continue with Paseo services down in the south and what level that is, has to also benefit them. So this is where I would use TTI's help in crafting that package so that we can present to Socorro for consideration. And then we'll also have to show to them how they would apply their share of the federal urban funds, and then what their local match would be for their microtransit piece, but also for their contribution to the regional Paseo system and access system.
And John, have you had discussions with them on that circulator that's going to include Socorro?
We've not brought that to them yet, but one of the things I have heard from them, and is consistent with their transit development plan, is they'd like to see some level of service on North Loop Road. So with this proposed circulator being on North Loop Road, when we present that package to the city manager and their planning staff for consideration, we would incorporate that. And basically mention that that would be a cost share with the town of Horizon City. And also the unincorporated county, since there's some unincorporated areas also that circulator would serve.
That would be like Montana Vista, right?
No, we're talking like the
Sparks.
East Lake area.
Mm-hmm.
Sparks and East
East
Lake.
Lake.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, I think there's only 16 more slides, so. We've discussed about several of these key takeaways. We'll see if there's anything I want to highlight here. Yeah, actually, all the first set of bullet points in the local contributions are things that we just talked about. So in terms of those key takeaways, in terms of the figures, they're all laid out on this slide. Still, local share is about 41 cents on the dollar when you factor everything in. With all the rest of the money coming from federal and state sources.
What is the, Michael, what is the, is there like a state or national average or like a number that you say this is a really good target for the cost share or even the per person cost for transit?
Oh, well, I would say that it all depends on goals and funding availability. You know, on the low end, it's 20% or less, right? In terms of assuming that you can get as much federal money and state money as possible. Some systems are 100% locally funded because there aren't, enough federal or state dollars or any available to draw down. So in terms of what's the right number is essentially really a local discussion So we did run some numbers on what it would look like if all of the services in the TDP were implemented as well, right? So I already sticker shocked you once, so I'm gonna go ahead and give you those numbers. You have seen the TDP financial plan already, but these estimates are updates to that because we factored in TransDev's new contract rates, the direct fuel payments, and things like that into these estimates. This slide shows you the baseline versus the enhanced cost for every single route and what the variance is. Bottom line is that if the TDP were implemented as it's currently written, particularly the FY27 enhanced services, that would increase the cost of Paseo by about $1.3 million, or a 35% increase. The demand responsive services, which of course include not only ADA and the on-delay, but also that general public dial-a-ride service, right, where it greatly expands access throughout the unincorporated areas of the county. Also adding in the user-side subsidy program and the volunteer driver program increases the cost of these on-demand or demand responsive services by about 20%, or $200,015. So taking what we had as the baseline amount, and if we add all the enhancements programmed in the TDP in FY27 dollars, we anticipate it'd be about a $1.5 million increase on top of the cost of running the baseline service. This is, again, just provided for reference so we can kind of see what implementing everything in the TDP would actually look like now that we have better cost numbers. Because there's no additional grant funds available, we basically use them all already on the baseline service. Any cost increase in new services in FY27 will be funded locally, and that would result in increases to members' contribution. Now, I have that bottom bullet point on this slide is that a lot of these service increases likely would fall in El Paso County. Just to give you some rough numbers, 42% of the population of the demand response service falls all within El Paso County. And 50% of the new route mileage falls within El Paso County. So as those new services would get added, just to kind of, the local share of each member would change depending on the service mix. But a lot of that, if implemented as programmed in the TDP, would result in increases on El Paso County's contribution.
If I may add, I know on Monday I did a presentation with Michael Walk and others about the county strategic plan. It is the county strategic plan for the unincorporated area to focus on regional transit expansion. And I know the county's going through the budget process now. So one thing we'll need to have a discussion with the county representatives is that strategic plan still a goal of the county going into the upcoming fiscal year? And if so, then adding some of these additional Paseo routes and the general public demand response transit could be done in the unincorporated areas without impacting or minimal impacts to the other member agencies. But we definitely would need to get some clarity if that strategic goal that's in the county's strategic plan today is still of merit going into fiscal year 27 and beyond, because that will help us in being able to do appropriate financial planning.
Well, I can just say, as the county goes into strategic planning over the next month and then budgeting, the county is not unlike all the other municipalities, right? It just depends on what the budget constraints are and the fiscal constraints are. And I'm sure it still remains a strategic priority. It's just a matter of what can be funded, so.
Funding and when the county would like us to implement it, whether it's immediately or over a course of 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. We should have more clarity on that in the next couple of months.
Okay, and last but not least, another item requested by the board in February was taking a look at a potential revenue vehicle replacement fund and sort of how that could look. So the next few slides just walk you through a preliminary look at what something like that could be. In the end, the whole point of this is to create a transparent, replicable method to begin building a reserve to replace revenue vehicles. There's approximately 26 fixed route vehicles and 10 demand response vehicles in the fleet. And These vehicles eventually need to be replaced. To date, local share has not been needed for these vehicle replacements because TxDOT's had transportation development credits or TDCs available to contribute as match, but that may not always be the case. So what would it look like if y'all wanted to start setting aside a little bit of money every year in order to meet the local match requirements for fleet replacement? Some of the key numbers in here will be updated in the next rendition of this. We did assume that the 26 Paseo vehicles would need to be replaced. To replace the 26 consistently, you'd have to replace about 3.8. I know you can't actually replace a fraction of a vehicle in a year, but just for budgeting purposes, that's sort of our target. That's assuming we replace every one of those vehicles in 7 years, which is really the minimum amount of time you have to keep the vehicle before you would dispose of it and replace it. That 7-year mark can be pushed based on direction from staff or the board because that's really determined by your transit asset management plan. Same thing with the vans. The target we assumed is to replace the van after 4 years, which means we'd have to replace the Andale vehicles about 2.5 a year to replace 10 vehicles across 4 years. And so this table lays out for you for the Paseo vehicles. These are the cutaways, right? We used pricing available from, and John, I don't remember what the pricing sheet is, California, something.
Yeah, the bus van price list.
Microphone, please.
Okay, thank you. So it was from an MPO in California. You said, John, sorry, because they just said they had to use your microphone, so I just repeated what you
My
said.
apologies. Yes, the MPO from the San Francisco Bay Area region.
That's where we got these prices from. That got us through, I think, to FY30, and then we just assumed a 2.5% increase annually in the replacement cost of a vehicle. And this is in essentially a very basic math thing here we did here. How much is the replacement price of a vehicle? How many are we trying to replace every year? How much does that cost? If you're going to cover that with 20% local share, that's the bottom line number, right? So annually, for the Paseo vehicles, assuming we're trying to replace them after 7 years, you need set aside about $200,000 and change every year in order to have sort of a very flat line amount of local revenue built up to replace those vehicles and to keep your replacement schedule. The vans for ETA Access and Andale is a lower dollar value because they, of course, cost less each, even though we're trying to replace, we're trying to replace fewer per year because we have a smaller fleet. So you can see that amounts to a little over $70,000 per year. When you put all that together, the total contribution amount annually would be something like $290,000 from all members combined. And then we ran through an allocation process because we haven't done this before. How do you allocate that local share to all different members? We just used the same variables we use when we allocate operational cost, miles for the fixed route, and population for the access and Andale services. So you can see the vehicle contribution rates, 28 cents per mile for Paseo and $1.15 per capita. And then we apply that in sort of that table that you're used to seeing before, just kind of recreating that. But this is what it would look like if we had sort of a special section just for the vehicle replacement costs and how much those contributions would need to be in order to get to our target for just 1 year. And this value would increase by about 2.5% per year as the vehicle prices continue to increase. So that, there's pros to this approach. It's very consistent. It's consistent with our allocation methodology. It's, what the price is going to be every year and how it would increase if we did want to start setting aside local share for that. Some of the cons of this approach is that the consistent replacement schedule doesn't match the actual replacement schedule. So the amount of cash on hand you may need in any one fiscal year won't necessarily match what you've accrued up to that point. For example, there's 12 vehicles that would be replaced in 2031 instead of 3.8. right? And so when you get to, we don't have enough time to save up enough money to actually fully fund the local share for those 12 vehicles if you replace them then. But again, you'd have some set aside. One recommendation we had when reviewing this replacement schedule, you see on the bottom point, and John and I have already had some conversation on this, about the replacement schedule assumed in this plan. The ETA numbers are on the far right-hand side of those last two bullet points, where the vans were every 4 years and the cutaways for Paseo were every 7 years. But FTA has default values that they recommend, which are higher than that. And TxDOT also has values that are higher than that in their terms of their recommendation, which would slow down the replacement schedule and also reduce the cost, right, annual cost of replacing the vehicles in the fleet.
In the TAM plan, we assumed FTA's minimum values. It doesn't necessarily commit the board to having to follow that, but a van is generally 4 years or 100,000 miles, whichever comes first. A cutaway is generally 7 years or 250,000 miles, whichever comes first. So if we opted to increase our useful life benchmark to FTA's default of 8 years, that means we'll be, even though we've met the minimal useful life before we can start spending federal dollars to replace the asset, we'll be running the van another 4 more years. So we just have to be mindful that the cost per mile to operate that van is going to keep increasing because of the fact that the van is already beyond its useful life. The same thing for the cutaway. But to Michael's point, there is great financial value to the system if we upped our replacement schedule a little longer and try to fully use our assets to its fullest extent. Fortunately, we are lucky that with all the grants that staff has received over the years, we have a brand new fleet. So we don't necessarily have to worry about fleet replacement for a while. But we will have to start, if we do not get TDCs through TxDOT or FTA on the local share, we would have to rely on local contributions to replace the assets as early as 32?
Depends on which replacement schedule, but
Assuming if we follow the FTA ULB default.
yeah, the biggest hit is 31.
31.
Then they would come in 32.
Yeah. So that gives us time to build a reserve and monitor TxDOT's TDC's processes.
Okay. So I've been up here a while. You're probably tired of hearing me talk, but I will stop. That's the end of the presentation. Are there any questions on anything that was presented?
I had a quick question. So, so the increase for, or I should say, yeah, for the replacement, right? If we're gonna keep them longer, if we go by that, the other figures or whatever, does that would probably mean also that maintenance will have to go up, right, as well?
We have a contract with Transdev for the next.
They might want you to use your mic again, John. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, keeps turning off. My apologies. We have a contract with Transdev for 5 years, and then we have 5 one-year options. So provided that those vehicles are maintained in the best condition they possibly can be maintained, and that their cost per mile doesn't significantly increase, there's really no hit to ETA because we already know Transdev's costs for the next up to 10 years.
Okay.
But if Transdev feels that if we delay replacements and their cost per mile is exceeding what they budgeted back in 2025, they may come to the board asking for a renegotiation of their rates. And that's where we would see the increase in the cost to maintain those vehicles. So we're gonna have to balance that carefully. And also just continue to monitor and ensure that the vehicles are being maintained so we can get the maximum useful life out of them as possible.
And then last, John, are there any opportunities for any type of grants just for the replacement of these vehicles?
So we will have our 5339 funds from the urban side. We'll get a portion of 5339 from the rural side, and that's for primarily bus facilities. We will also have our traditional 5307 and our traditional 5311 that we can use. The issue is that there's always a local match to that. There is some movement from a lot of rural transit operators and small urban transit operators to up the matching requirements, or to lower the matching requirements for operations and for capital, because communities that don't have taxing ability are struggling in getting local match. So that's being built into the package for the upcoming reauthorization of the surface transportation bill. So we might be able to see some potential relief if the newer matching requirements come into play. And we're talking as low as 5 to 10% match for capital versus 20. And same thing for operations for those that are operating in rural areas or operate a lower number of peak vehicles in fixed route transit service.
And then based on what you said, it kind of brought up another question is like, as far as taxing authority. Well, I know the county does, right? Have the taxing authority for those services?
We have the 1 cent sales tax for road and bridge that can go to transit.
No, sales tax, no, I mean, I don't,
Property tax?
I mean, we get half a penny in sales tax, but it doesn't go, we, in the past, had dedicated 1 penny of our ad valorem property tax to things like this, but, I mean, all of the issues that are going on right now with our budget and budget constraints, I mean, everything's up in the air until we approve a budget, you know, I mean, that's something that will have to be discussed. I mean, these contributions would have to be discussed every budget cycle.
Okay.
So, and speaking of the taxing authority, TTI did do an analysis as part of the 2018-2019 study, looking at every municipality that would participate in the LGC. And I think, I don't have the exact numbers, but we can share this at the next board meeting. But I don't think all the municipalities has enough taxing authority. Some of them may have already reached their 2%.
Yeah, there's a cap, there's a tax cap every year of 3.5% year over year, if the county decides to increase its tax rate, right? So, I mean, one thing that we've been talking about a lot recently is trying to not increase our tax rate. And so when we would have to look for other efficiencies or cut in other areas to be able to increase the budget for this. We can increase our tax rate. We could put it to a vote of the public. If we wanted to go over the 3.5%, that would trigger the rollback rate or the go above what used to be called the rollback rate, but now is the voter approval rate. And if we wanted to be able to fund this and other things that would push us over that 3.5 cap, we could take it to the voters and ask them to approve, if it's public safety or transit or anything else. But, looking here, it's $3 million is something, $3 million, I think is what you had.
Was the total local share needed for baseline?
From the
Yeah.
county, right?
Not just from the county, no. I'd have to go back and,
Or it was like one,
about
just
2
half of
million.
it, about 2 million.
yeah, it was 2, I think it was around 2.
2
yeah.
million from the county, and that's above and beyond what we're already funding, right? So that would be in addition to our. And just to put things into context, for 1 penny of ad valorem tax that we assess, we only generate about $6 million. We would either have to cut somewhere else in our budget or increase the tax.
And I'm speaking strictly of a worst case scenario, if we, because I know with the grants are right now, it's pretty volatile, based on administration, and I know that they're cutting a lot. And we're losing a lot of grants too, so.
Yeah, so we also, I don't know if the ETA plans on putting together like a legislative agenda for a state legislative agenda, but to possibly, advocate on our behalf as well, but also include in the county's legislative agenda to talk about funding needs for public transit. But that's something that we can include in the county's legislative agenda when we come up with that over the next a couple of months because there's a legislative session that'll be starting in January of next year.
That's a good idea. Something we had talked about briefly before, but we should definitely start preparing for that. And I think municipalities we'd have to look, and maybe your city attorneys can look into, what that looks like. I believe municipalities can add on the ballot certain tax rate increases for transit specifically. And I know that other cities do that, but I'm not sure what that process looks like.
Yeah, well, and I'll just add that what John was referring to in the 2018, 2019 study was specifically an assessment of whether a coordinated county transportation authority could be created. There's a few there's a few legislatively available ways to create dedicated funding streams for public transportation. And they all tend to circle around sales tax.
Yeah, so Sun Metro is largely funded by a sales tax the
Correct.
city was able to assess. I can't remember when it was, but they allowed the county to assess a half a penny, and I think the city.
Half a penny, yes.
Another
1988.
penny and a half or something like that. And so that's what Sun Metro depends upon a lot, but the county doesn't, the county's sales tax goes to reducing our debt. It doesn't go to anything other than that.
Right, and the assessment we did looked at every municipality's current sales tax rate, and virtually all of them were already at the 8.25.
And we're at our cap, yeah.
Yeah, you're at your
The
cap,
city of El
yes.
Paso is at its cap, and the county of El Paso is at its sales tax cap. Yeah.
Right. Which made those options not available for ETA.
Correct.
And then finally, so when the ETA is gonna become a political subdivision, right?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
The ETA is gonna become
A political subdivision?
yeah, political subdivision, the
We're-
ETA?
We're already a political subdivision as of January 1 of 2021. But what will happen is basically all the grants will be in EPATS's name next fiscal year. It will no longer be in the county's name.
Okay,
So that
It'll
allows
be
us to.
independent of the county.
it'll be independent
Yes.
of the county.
So that means we'll be able to make our own expenses through Rio Grande as our fiscal agent versus today, technically all of our expenses minus the local shares that the members are contributing is being made through El Paso County.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I would ask Madam Chairwoman and the board if, so you've heard the preliminary figures today. We'll continue to refine and next month present some more refined figures and some options, at least for the board to consider. And then perhaps at the May meeting, get some direction after the board hears these options on which course you would like us to go and how we could present the case to each of the member agencies.
Okay, I'm glad we're starting early this year. Thank you.
Are there like any specific, based on what you heard today, at least any feedback, direction that you want staff to focus on as we work to craft those options and, of course, bring down the local shares?
I think speaking as a chair, I think we definitely have to focus on reducing that local share to extremely lower levels. I don't think it's, I think trying to stay within a reasonable percentage increase over last year should be our goal. And the numbers today were not close to that. So hopefully we can refine that, and it might take several work sessions to get there.
I'd also like, if the board was open to this, as a guiding policy, one, especially as we transition to the urban funds, that we should be building our system based on what are known revenues to the system and not rollover grants. I don't envision that with us transitioning to urban funds, that we're gonna, year after year, be rolling over a lot of grant funds. Basically, what we get from the urbanized area, if the number is 3 million, we should assume that it's going to be 3 billion year after year plus CPI, and not build a system that is 3 billion plus 2 billion of older grant funds that makes us 5 billion, because because it's one-time funds.
Right.
And then, because eventually we're going to get back to that 3 billion again.
I agree.
Yeah, last thing I was gonna say, so then we really need to focus on the realignment of those routes to make them more efficient, right, and cut some costs.
Yes.
And then the other thing I was gonna say is, there was some other idea as far as, or any other ideas as far as cost-cutting measures, I guess.
I think the biggest one is going to be the service. And really looking at our performance measures, looking at the route alignments, and basically coming up with something different. There might be cases where we don't need to run 7 days a week on all the routes. So we only run 7 days a week on routes that truly need 7-day-a-week service, Monday through Friday on routes that need Monday through Friday. Some cases may result in reduction of service hours or complete termination of the route in favor of microtransit. And definitely the South County really needs to be looked at the most. I feel even with the elimination of Route 84 and what we've done today with the South County, I think there could be some more cost-saving techniques that could be done. And then, of course, with the carbon reduction program, doing something that makes good sense for the town of Horizon City, connecting into Socorro, San Elizario, and Clinton.
And then as far as like, I saw the fuel was a little high as well, right? For fuel, like 233,000 or something like that?
So it's actually a savings, because had we had left the fuel under Transdev, that number was higher, and then there was also profit and overhead of Transdev attached to that. So we actually have lowered our fuel costs by making this change, by paying direct.
And is that all fossil fuel right now, or is it?
It's compressed natural gas and gasoline.
Okay.
And then in one of the actions, Sun Metro is making a change on how they're calculating fuel from 10 cents per therm to a 20% indirect overhead charge. So we did factor that in to our budget costs.
So that comes to the next point I had, is that I know Sun Metro recently got like that grant for, was it 45 electric vehicles?
Electric vehicles, yes.
Is there any possibility for us to maybe get some of that as well?
So we have already a grant for 4 electric vehicles that will be introducing into the system later on this fiscal year. So that'll be kind of a pilot. There is still some difficulties with electric, and you may recall when I brought this to the board. Unfortunately, vans and cutaways are not 1 for 1. They're now 1 for 2. So we had to change our pilot from actually putting those vans on Paseo routes and put them on access and underlay routes, because if we had put them on Paseo, there'd be more revenue hour cost that we would be paying to Transdev, because the vehicles don't get enough charge.
Okay. And then last thing, Tom, I'm sorry to keep that. so
No,
much of it.
please.
We had discussed before, if you recall, Chairwoman, starting like a capital type of fund as far as with whatever, and if we're lucky to have any type of, excess funds, whatever remaining. Are we working on that?
Yeah,
on
so that was
plan
the
for
last few slides that Michael presented, is basically having a capital reserve fund. And we need to talk strategy on how we're going to fund that. But we may need to look at, right now, since all of our capital is new, we'll need to look at appropriate levels of what we need to replace, and then how do we start building that capital reserve fund? Our first and foremost is we want to get transportation development credits, because if we can get TDCs, we don't have to ask any of the members for local match to replace our assets. If for whatever reason we run out of TDCs in the state of Texas, and TDCs come from toll revenues, basically, that's where the local match is going to come into play. Carl, if I may ask, does Sun Metro use TDCs for its 5307 and 5339 grants?
Yes.
Okay, so it's safe to say that as we transition into the urban, we'll be able to use the same?
I am not exactly familiar with the process, because I know it's in conjunction with MPO,
Yes.
So I do know that when we are applying for those grants, we work with the MPO to try to get those TDCs to help offset the cost of our match. So with you being in the pool now, I can't really say how that would affect the overall availability, if that's what you're asking. But that's probably something we need to work with the MPO on asking.
So we'll continue those discussions with the MPO to, as we transition to the urban side, how we can continue to leverage those TDCs so that hopefully we don't have to ask the members for matching on capital replacements in the future.
Yeah, because we've already got some bad news from the MPO as well, as far as some of the cuts on the grants and having to make up for the losses.
Correct.
As well.
Yes, Scott?
Yeah, so I apologize, I had to step out for a short time, but of that 1.1 million difference that you were trying to make up, do you know what percentage, well, it's a two-part question, but the 4 positions you're looking at filling, how do they compare to that amount of that delta?
Would you be able to answer that, Michael?
So if I understood the question, it was, what's the cost of the 4 new positions?
Relative to,
The 1.1.
Yeah.
either is it in terms of increase in the previous budget or
Yeah.
a portion of that 1.1?
I know it, I know I have the detail. I don't have the number in the back of my head in terms of the delta.
I think it was about 940,000 for all 8 staff
Nine-
members.
nice
For all
72.
8, yeah.
So-
So close to $1 million for all 8.
Yeah, I think that's worth highlighting, and 2 of those positions are grant-related, I believe, correct?
No, actually, all of them.
All of them are grant-related. And I will say that when I started working with Sun Metro in 2020, Sun Metro historically had not engaged in any competitive grant activity. We were just relying on the 5307, 5339. And since we have dedicated resources to that grant process, it's been night and day. We got the 45 EVs, another 32 million for fixed route buses, or 40 and 60-foot buses. It's a little bit different depending on your current fleet and how you're looking at funding that over time. And you may want to ramp up on those positions depending, but that's where that delta is coming from. So it can give you that bang for the buck, I guess is what I'm saying, if you put it in perspective in terms of what's available. Now, the difference in presidential administrations, you're not going to see a lot available for electrics anymore. Now, there'll be other stuff, and that whole congressional allocation. So it's a little bit of a moving target, but you need the people there able to have a process to apply when those notices pop up. If you don't have that in place, you're losing out on a lot of money.
Exactly. And one of the 4 positions that we're bringing on is a finance manager, and their sole purpose is to basically work with Rio Grande on the management of our finances, but also applying for grants. As you know, we've pursued several discretionary grants since I've come to the authority. It's my intent to continue to pursue all available discretionary grants possible. Grateful for Congressmember Escobar for giving us that opportunity to even apply for some funds at the last minute. But that's where we're going to get the biggest bang on trying to continue to keep the local contribution costs low until we can come up with an alternative mechanism, whether it's some taxing authority. And partnering with Texas Transit Association and others that are trying to also advocate for local funding, because Texas is one of the few states that does not give a lot of state funding to support transit. If I compare this to California, California gives a ton of money. Texas gives very little. So we continue to partner with them and support their legislative platform. Hopefully one day we'll be able to get some more state funding, which will also help on the local contribution side. But I think we're a few years out on that, but all we can do is just keep advocating and keep demonstrating the value of transit. It is helpful to know that TxDOT did recently circulate a multimodal transit plan statewide, seeking feedback, and they've also stated in that plan the desire and need for increased state funding for not only rural areas, but for small urban and large urban. Large urbans are the ones that are suffering by not getting state funding. Hence why Sun Metro ended up passing a tax to compensate for that.
John, I'm wondering if, based on this discussion and, I think future discussions that need to happen, we've talked in the past about having a strategic planning session. As a board, we haven't yet had one. I know that's part of your plan for the year. And so maybe now is the right time to start thinking about doing that, maybe in conjunction with the budgeting process, so that, if we have to reduce our budget and our scope for our operations, perhaps this year, we can have maybe a 5-year plan and all be on the same page about what that should look like.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I've actually been seeking quotes for a strategic planning facilitator. We have money in the budget for it. I'm just waiting for one more quote, and I'm hoping to bring this to the board next month.
Okay.
So we can definitely have that by May.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So that was just
Informational.
informational. Thank you. Again, Mr. Walk. Yes.
Just a request, can we get a copy of that presentation?
Yes, we'll email that out after today's board meeting.
Okay.
to everybody.
Preliminary.
Right.
Okay.
Strictly preliminary.
Okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
Yeah. With that caveat.
Don't raise an alarm bells. We're not
Right.
asking,
We'll
we're not formally
We'll
giving
put
you
a watermark all over it that says this is preliminary.
A
We're not
draft,
sending
right?
any
Yeah.
letters
Yes.
asking for you guys to pay that money, because
Yes.
I will need board authorization to finalize what that number is.
Right, no, this is just for us, when we start our budgeting process, which we start early so that we can start planning for it, like a worst-case scenario, I guess you could say, in case it happens. So, yeah, but not for, to use as a final number.
Yes, please don't.
Okay.
I don't want to get the mayor's freaking out
Right,
right
no,
now.
no, that's.
It's happened with this
Please.
already. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I know we're coming up on
Coming up to the last few items. We'll
on
make this quick.
our third hour, so we can move forward to the next agenda item.
Moving on to item 6E, receive an update on the transition of El Paso County Transit Operations Department employees to El Paso Transportation Authority from El Paso County Human Resources Department. Mr. John Endo.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. I do have El Paso County Human Resources Department on the line. And they have a very slight update on what we've been working on collectively as it relates to the transition of employees from El Paso County to EPATS. Is it Ms. Acosta? Are you on the line? Bernice?
I see Berenice on the,
Or is it Sam?
Yes. Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yes?
May I
Okay.
ask if you could share the update that you emailed to me with the board, please?
Yes, of course. So just a quick recap. This is Berenice Acosta with El Paso County Human Resources Department. On February 27th, our department met with the board to provide an overview of the HR services currently supporting the transit department and the potential impact to employees once the department transitions from the county to its own entity. We're currently working with the county's risk pool board on the ability to continue with medical and dental benefits and with various sponsored vendors for additional ancillary benefits, which would potentially require amendments to existing contracts. I would like to note that the next meeting for the risk pool board is not until May 20th. It's the third Wednesday of the month. I believe so May 20th. Where we'll be taking an action item before them to seek whether, they approve for the continuation of the medical and dental plan. So we'll have an update after that meeting to be able to bring that information back to the board. And then, of course, we're hopeful that in the next couple of weeks, we'll hear back from the sponsored vendors on the ability to continue those benefits. And lastly, staff is working on drafting a contingent interlocal agreement to maintain existing transit staff as county employees should we run out of time before the transition. So we're simultaneously working on that contingent agreement. And currently, that's the small update that we have for the board today.
Thank you very much.
And Ms. Acosta, hearing comments from Commissioner Stout about the 457, I would presume that as part of your discussions with the insurance brokers, that includes us being able to continue to offer that as an optional benefit to the employees with Nationwide?
Correct, yes, yes. So that's one of the sponsored vendors, as Commissioner Stout mentioned. We are also in communication with them on the ability to continue with that benefit, the 457 plan option.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Thank you for the update. Berenice.
Yes, of course, absolutely.
All right.
Moving on to item 6F, authorize the executive director to negotiate a lease with Endeavor's Health and Wellness Center for administrative office space in consultation with legal counsel, consistent with the terms presented to the board, and provided that any material changes shall be brought back to the board for approval. Mr. Ando?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, I'm requesting authorization to identify office space at Endeavors. We presently have office space that's being provided by the county at no cost through the end of the fiscal year. We have a very small 768 square foot space. We could house one more employee, but won't be able to house all 8. We've looked at various locations. The county's offering the courthouse on this, actually on the lower level, for $3,500 per month for 1,268 square feet. We looked at the same space at the Rio Grande Council of Governments. The space is not ready and requires construction. We've talked with the help of Sun Metro, we've talked with the airport. There's no space available. We asked the possibility about using Sun Metro's facility. They don't have space right now because of the reconstruction of their maintenance facility. We looked at the Glory Road Transit Center. It'll require complete build-out, so that will require some costs. So with the help of Board Member Bishop, we did meet at Endeavors, and they have space available for all 8 of us at $5,500 per month. And we believe that that would be a great location to house ETA, because one will be by ETA service, the Route 20, serving the Monte Vista area, and 2 will be about 2.4 miles away from the future transit operations and maintenance facility that will be constructed on Windermere Avenue. I envision that we would occupy this space sometime around the summer to fall timeframe, once we've identified and have filled all of the positions available. The space already has desks. The only cost we would have to do is bring internet to the space. We already own the technology equipment, so we basically just move our items and be in business within a weekend after moving. Happy to answer any questions about this if there are any.
Do you have an address for that location?
Yes, it is 12135 Pebble Hills Boulevard.
That's off of Pebble Hills and Loop 375.
East of the loop?
It is west of the
West
loop. Just west of it. It's a beautiful, I mean, it's a new facility. It just opened in November. Very, very, very nice facility.
That took a while to get that built, right?
It did.
There's even space for us to hold the board meetings there as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was COVID that kind of slowed it down, right?
I think so. I think so. Oh, so that we would be able to host our board meetings there? It has the
Yes, they
technology
have a very large
capabilities?
conference room.
Does it have the AV equipment? That's
It does as well.
Okay.
And are these like offices for each staff member, or how does, or?
So there would be 4 different offices. One of them could hold 4 employees, and then we would have the other offices, and then we will also have a front reception area
Oh, nice.
as part of, and they've agreed to lower their 5,500 to 5,000, so that'll be 60,000 a year. We have consulted with TxDOT, and they've stated that we can add this as a activity line item in the grant to pay for the cost of the rent.
Okay, so it'd
So-
be like maybe an indirect cost?
It'll be a direct cost at an 80% federal share, 20% match.
Oh, okay,
It's the same thing that we would basically be doing for the Sun Metro facility for TransDev.
okay.
And we already anticipated this cost in future budget and
Yes.
expenses.
And we have basically a maintenance, we have a line item for maintenance facility and leasing costs, so the office cost will be built into that. And I believe Mr. Walk is going to verify that it's included in the fiscal year 27 budget.
Yes, Mr. Walk?
It is not in the current
Oh,
FY27 budget.
No, but
Microphone,
I think you
please.
said that you're going to.
Going to.
Yes.
okay.
Just wanted to make sure.
Okay, thank you for
Yes.
that clarification. I think it would be a great location for ETA, at least in the interim until the facility, the new maintenance facility is constructed.
We would request a lease up until at least 28 with an option to go into 29, so that once the facility is ready for occupancy, the lease can end at Endeavors and we can just move over and not
Pretty
have to break any
optimistic
lease.
about that construction timeline.
Well, it's fully funded. We
Okay.
got the 12 million plus the state funds, so as long as costs don't increase, the facility, I think we can make it.
Okay,
As long as it's grant funded, right?
well, even then, I think you're being optimistic for the timeline, but thank you. I think this is a good idea. Does anybody else have questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. John, very well job done on that. I mean, that's a low cost. It's a really nice office, brand new. I mean, that's excellent. Good work on that.
Thank you. I did take the staff there on Monday, and I'll let Anna comment, but I hear that the staff was very pleased with the facility. Anna, if you want to add anything?
It's very accommodating. It does have a lot of amenities for all of us. It has a gym, it has a coffee shop. It is very spacious. It is quite close to all of us, so it's a really, really nice option.
So the commute time for majority of the staff, excluding me, because I'm downtown, is about 9 to 20 minutes
Okay, great.
compared to the hour. Some of them live in Horizon City, some in the east side, so.
Yeah, I know we're trying to, on the county side, we're trying to see if we can relocate some of our veteran services offices at that location, pending the budget, because it is a facility that's bringing together different community service providers. So I think it also makes sense for ETA to be among other service providers for the community there, so. Okay, well, I will make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion to approve by Commissioner Butler and a second by Eddie Conde. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 6G, receive a report from the Executive Director regarding El Paso Transportation Authority staff activities. Mr. Ando?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, my report's in the packet, starting at 393. In the interest of time, are there any questions about my report or anything you want me to highlight?
I don't have any questions. Thank you for the thorough update, as always.
I will just ask the board, as we go through our planning efforts for routes, please pay close attention to the route performance data on pages 417 and 418. So when I come back to the board with potential changes, you'll understand why I'm recommending these changes.
Yes, thank you.
Moving on to item 6H, receive report of Transdev's operation for the month of February 2026. We have Ms. Jennifer Garcia.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board. For our February performance, we had 0 preventable accidents, 1 non-preventable accident. For the on-time performance fixed route, we were at 96.2. For our on-time performance for paratransit, we were at 98%. Our rides per hour for paratransit at 1.12. Our Andale riders were 135. Our Andale trips, 123. For the fixed route ridership, we were at 13,863. For the paratransit ridership, we were at 750, with the trips being 747. Our clients in the service area for paratransit were 220. Outside of the service area, 18, with a total of 2,038. For our road calls was 1, flat tire. RPMs at 100% completed, 29. Our update on human resources, we had 23 fixed route drivers. We were 3 drivers short. 12 paratransit drivers, 3 fixed route driver positions open, and 3 paratransit driver positions open. We started a class with 3 paratransit drivers, and we're getting busier with on-demand and ADA services. We hired 3 paratransit drivers and still looking to hire 1 reservationist for paratransit. And that will be all the updates.
Thank you for those updates. I'm looking at the ridership numbers. This combines, I think, John, your update as well as TransDev's. Would it be possible, just because, we're also, I think, trying to understand the impact of the zero fare on ridership, maybe next month we can get a percentage comparison year over year from last year to this year for the first few months?
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll do that as a separate item, so we can have that
Great.
discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, what month do we do that, the free fare?
We started in late December, so we've had now nearly 3 full months of
Yes.
fare-free. Okay.
And we are seeing the ridership trend upward as a result of going fare-free.
I'd also be interested, particularly in knowing whether we're increasing ridership for Sun Metro through our fare-free program.
So can you restate that? I'm sorry.
If we're increasing ridership for Sun Metro as well. So is there a way to know that?
Let me talk with, if I could talk with you, Carl, about that, but since we don't really collect a fare, it's hard to understand who's transferring, so we may have to do like a ad hoc survey and ask folks, how many of you are transferring to Sun Metro type of a thing?
Yeah, I think if you're able to get your counts from the termination point at our transit centers, then it's safe to assume everyone who alights is getting on a Sun Metro
Yeah.
bus.
Right.
So I don't know if you have the ability to capture that or not at particular stops.
We can work with Transdev and come up with like a quick sample survey to get an idea.
Or is there some way we can work with Sun Metro to see if you've seen an increase in ridership since
Yeah,
that
I mean, we
date
can look at it, sure.
at the transfer centers? Okay.
It's still a pretty small sample size, but I think to the extent we can look at it.
Okay, great. Well, then that does it for today. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for your time and your patience and your thoroughness. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Oh, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
A motion by Commissioner Butler and a second by Andrea Carrillo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We will adjourn the meeting at 4:32 PM.